Tyrone is a cutting-edge, new-age investment banker and an all-around success story. Handsome, dark, tall, athletic, smart, charming, highly connected, and most importantly of all, he has very respectable pockets. He's really good at his job, is a pool of great ideas, and contributes immensely to the growth of his industry. And he occasionally leads the choir at his church. So think of Tyrone as an Idris Elba with a Bloomberg terminal and a Bible. He is what ladies would call a catch or a snack. He is what Britain would call proof of our tolerance, and that anyone that can make it here can make it if they blah, 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 blah. Tyrone feels upset about the lack of progress and recognition for his efforts. As opposed to suing, joining a rival company, or going postal, he has complained to the Human Resources Director, Karen. We meet Tyrone and Karen in conversation.
Come in. Tyrone, how are you? So good to see you.
Karen, it's great to see you too. I am very well, thanks.
Splendid. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for your time.
Right. So, Tyrone, we're here today to discuss your recent expression of dissatisfaction with your career prospects within the department.
That is correct.
Specifically, you've expressed anger and frustration at what you consider to be lack of progress in forms of increased pay, promotion. Have I read this correctly?
That is correct, Karen. I've been the highest grossing salesperson for the last 4 years. I've retained all my clients, and many of my ideas have been acknowledged as groundbreaking for our industry. I cannot see what more I could do in order to be promoted. In the same period, I have seen other people who have contributed a fraction of my efforts promoted above me. I'm sorry, Karen, but I'm left with no option but to state my concerns.
I see. And why do you think this perceived discrepancy exists?
I'm not entirely certain what is driving this or why this is happening, but...
Tyrone, this conversation is completely off the record, so you can be honest with me. Chatham House rules apply. At the risk of sounding rather crass, do you think that this may be something to do with your ethnicity? As a woman in business...
A white woman in business.
A woman is a woman, Tyrone. We don't have to drag race into everything.
Absolutely, yes, you're completely right, yeah.
But as a woman in business, now I think I understand and identify with this feeling. Might this be happening because perhaps in your personal view, because you're black. Could this be happening because you're black?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Uppity. We are an intellectual playground where we go where other people wouldn't dare tread. So you've just witnessed a play called The Story of Us. And I'm sure you have no idea, you completely understand why we've called it that. So we're going to take all of 20 seconds more to repeat your last question.
Right, what was it? Okay. But as a woman in business, I think I understand and I identify this feeling. Might this be happening in your personal view because you're a nigger?
We can skip to black. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, right, fair enough. So, welcome to Uppity. We go there. This is an interactive forum. We want to understand how you would answer that question. Don't jump up all at once. So if you have something to say, as we all know how this normally goes, welcome to everybody if this is your first time coming over here. What we do here is that if you wish to say something, you gradually rise to your feet and you just utter this glorious term called point of blackness. That's all you have to say. Repeat it with me. Point of... No. This is energy. Point of. Give it back to me. Point of. Good. How should Tyrone answer that question? Any takers? Please.
So if I was Tyrone, I'd say, yes, it is because I'm black. And I would then go on to say, the proof is X, Y, Z, and list not only what's happened to me, but what's happened to lots of other black people in a similar position where people have risen above them and due to whatever reasons within the culture of the company, we've been left behind.
What do you do for a living?
Professionally, I'm a journalist and filmmaker,
fair enough, that makes
but
sense.
no.
Fair enough, that makes sense. That's totally fine. All right, that makes perfect sense. Sorry, can I grab? Any other takers? Bernard, let's hear what you got to say.
Thank you. I would not acknowledge that question and instead go back to the initial point is, what more could I do to get the promotion I feel I deserve? You brought up black, that's your business. I came here because I'm the best at what I do. I outperform everybody. I've got the numbers and the referrals and, the repertoire of my managers to back it. I asked you, what more can I do to get my promotion? And you're talking about Nigeria, Ghana, or whatever. Let's be serious.
Dame Baptiste?
First thing I would have done as Tyrone was make it very clear to Karen that this conversation is being recorded. And it's definitely not off the record. That would be the first thing. I would also would have brought evidence of my superior performance before alluding to my race. But I would definitely make it very clear that the conversation is being recorded and I am seeking legal counsel prior to having this meeting in the first place.
I might just begin by asking if she wanted to try and ask the question again in a better way before I went into why I thought I was the best at the job and why I thought I'd been overlooked, because she'd asked the question in a very stupid way and I'm sure she could do better.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Dave. Thanks very much, Albie. We'll go to one more person over here and then we're going to get the evening started.
I've actually been in this situation myself, and what I did was I just ended the conversation and I got another job where they valued my worth.
Round of applause for our brother. There we go. So I want to say thank you so much to Tyrone and thank you so much to Karen. We are very, very grateful to both of you for enlightening us this evening. I just wonder, we're not going to end this with a vote or anything else, but I think just wanted to point out that it's actually a very, very difficult situation to find yourself in, because if you actually answer that question as our aunt over here said, or our sister over here said, I think it opens up the door to catastrophe, essentially, because that little complaint of racism goes from one report to the other report to the CEO and you're pretty much, do you think if we answered as Aunt said, do you think that he will still be at the company in 18 months' time? Yes or no? No. Okay. Do you think if we answered like Bernard said, sorry, no, that's not Bernard, but you look like my friend Bernard, would he still be at the company in 18 months' time? Sorry, guys. Do we think he would still be in the company if he answered as the gentleman said? Probably. You think so? Okay, interesting. He might be a disciplinary. Okay, interesting. Well, we are going to leave you guys to decide how to, because it's called The Story of Us. That's what this play is called, and it truly is the story of us. And I think eventually, one way or another, you're going to find yourself bumping into similar situations. And when you do, we're praying for you and we're rooting for you. So thank you very much. Karen, Tyrone, thank you very much. Much appreciated, both of you. Round of applause. Right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Uppity. This is our third edition. This is the What Have You Done For Me Lately edition of Uppity. Can we have our two high chairs here, please? So tonight's a very, very special night for us all, and we're really, really happy to see everybody because this is really important. It's a night about democracy. It's a night, of course, about arts, it's about culture, it's about politics. Of course, it's about highbrow blackness, and we're going to go through all of that tonight in one way or another. But we're going to start off with something very, very... If you have something to say, please come and grab the microphone and let us hear what you're saying. So we're going to start off tonight with something very, very special. A journalist who many of you may not have heard of right now, but you will hear of in the future, has done some really, really groundbreaking work on a rock star pastor called T.B. Joshua, who many of you, again, may not have heard of, but his platform, or his synagogue in Nigeria when he was still alive, actually attracted more people, more visitors, more tourists than Buckingham Palace and the Tower of London combined, which is bloody amazing stuff. But Yemisi Adegoke, who is the journalist who really dug into this in a great podcast called Disciples, which is on BBC Sounds, is here with us tonight. We're going to get to know her a little bit. But before we really kick into it, we're just going to play the actual trailer for it, if that's okay. So we'll let you hear that, then we'll just dive right into things. Be with us in a split second. If not, we'll just dive into it. Okay, I think we're going to dive right into it. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the breathtakingly brilliant Yemisi Adegoke. Look, Yemisi, thank you so much for your time this evening. We are immensely grateful. Hopefully we'll be able to get the trailer. Do you want to grab a microphone behind you? Yeah, sure. Or in fact, you can just grab the stands.
It's okay. It's okay. Sorry in advance. It's really weird to be on the receiving end of questions rather than asking them. So if I'm a bit awkward, that's why. Don't ask me anything I can't answer.
Right, thank you very much. Yemisi, thank you. Much appreciated your time. And of course, above that, we appreciate your work. Who are you and how the hell did you get here?
What kind of question is... I am a journalist. For the last 10 years, I've been living in Nigeria. I've only just relocated back to the UK. Kind of fell into investigative journalism, much to my mother's chagrin. Like, it's not something that I ever thought I would do. I was always really passionate about journalism growing up. And yeah, just kind of wandered into that field.
Interesting. Sorry, I should have said before we started this, if you have anything to say, so this is a very, very interactive session. We're not recording a podcast or anything else. So if you want to interject or have any contradiction or anything you wish to add or so, just stand up, say those glorious words and actually make your statements, and we will happily put it to the embassy in real time. But I wanted to ask you a question that's never asked of black British journalists. And it's a bit of a difficult one. It's probably the most difficult question I'll probably ask you tonight.
Okay.
Are you a journalist first or are you black first?
That's a really interesting question. I would say I'm a journalist first, and I would say that because I spent the last 10 years living in Nigeria. And living there and being able to report there meant that I could work on a whole raft of stories. I think in the UK, black journalists are sadly really pigeonholed into just areas about race. They don't get to flex their muscles in other areas of storytelling. And I think being in Nigeria for so long, I was reporting the news, I was working on culture stories, political stories, social stories. I got to really kind of expand my ideas around storytellings. It's only kind of being back in the UK that I'm being reminded every other minute that I'm black. So, yeah.
Interesting. So she's a journalist first. Anyway,
so, yeah.
We'll see what that means for us. So you moved to so you moved. How old? No, I'm not going to ask you how old you were when you moved to Nigeria.
Don't do that.
You moved to Nigeria, right? And here you are. So you were born, raised in Britain.
I was, yeah.
You then moved, which is not an easy thing. I've done that walk before, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. How was it for you as an experience?
Do you know what? I always say that, like, I feel like my dad kind of tricked me into doing it. So I had graduated from university, did my master's at NYU, and came back and couldn't really find a real job. Then sort of worked at The Guardian for a little bit, but was kind of just all over the shop. And then my dad was like, you know, a lot of people your age are kind of moving back to Nigeria. Why don't you try it? Why don't you move there and live and try to experience it for a bit? After all, if you don't like it, you can come back. So I went there. I did my National Youth Service. If you don't know about it, don't bother finding out. It's it's an experience. And then sort of started freelancing there. And I wouldn't say it was straightforward. Like there's the sort of, I lived in Lagos while I was there. And there's the Lagos of like Dirty December, and then there's the Lagos of the other 11 months of the year.
What's the other 11 months of the year like?
Yeah. It's difficult. Like, as a British person, and as a person with an accent and a passport, there's a degree of privilege that you're afforded that other people aren't. But I'm also a woman, so there's that. There's not being able to kind of like, you know, even the most basic thing, like renting a flat by yourself without having to pretend that you're married or going with your dad or going with someone who's going to rent that apartment for you, and having to deal with the sort of everyday sort of misogyny. So it was a complicated experience, but I definitely don't regret it. I feel like it was really fulfilling for me, especially professionally. Like I said before, I've been able to do things that I feel like if I'd have stayed in the UK and worked in a newsroom here, I just don't think I would have been able to achieve at all. I feel like I would have just been in a corner somewhere until there was some national race scandal, and then they wheeled me out to say something and then put me back. So, yeah.
I'm starting to get a vibe that you don't like talking, you don't like reporting about race much also. Or,
Do you know what? I think it's really valuable. I just think it's valuable when people do it in a real way.
Yeah.
So, for example, like The Independent, they have a race correspondent, Nadine White, who's amazing. I think the work she does is really important, and it shows that they have a commitment to taking that seriously, because she's a permanent member of staff and she's a race correspondent who works that beat every single day. Yep. Not just when somebody dies in brutal circumstances or they feel like they have to fulfill some sort of quota that they're rolling people out every now and then, to essentially talk about really traumatic things and provide no real support. So when it's done in a serious way, like with Nadine, then it's fantastic. Yeah. But I think in any other way, it's opportunistic and it's not serious. And I don't want to be placed in that type of position where I'm exploiting the trauma of my community just for the sake of it.
Sure. Can we have some of the TB Joshua documentary? It's about, I think it's a couple of seconds or maybe 30 seconds of it, just so we can get a vibe for it. If not, I'm going to move on once again.
I did send you the clip.
You did, and I sent it to them too. I mean, don't worry, there's going to be heads will roll after this. No, so, I'm joking. No. Here we go. I can't read your lips, but anyway, I'm going to move on. Because we're struggling. But look, so TB Joshua was a big figure, both in African religion, of course, both in Christianity in Africa, but beyond Africa, of course, South America also, even in Britain to a certain degree. He was revered, almost treated like a god to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And here you have unmasked him today for the BBC, an organisation often called Blacks Be Careful. And but this is quite interesting for the BBC too, because you go into the world. It's not normal for the BBC to talk about cultism and juju and everything else or so, from like going full what some might call darkest Africa or so. But you're dealing with hard journalism here and exposing really, really dark stuff. How did you pull this off? Where did this come from? How did you pull it off?
So it was a really big team, 15 journalists over 3 continents over 2 years.
Yep.
The lead investigator on this is the co-presenter on the podcast. It's a guy called Charlie. 2 white English women reached out to him and told him that they'd essentially been locked in a compound in Lagos.
Why did they pick him to go to?
He has done a lot of investigations on the continent. A lot of the stuff that you've watched.
Yep.
So the documentary on sex for grades at universities, the documentary on codeine in Nigeria.
Yep.
He has done a lot of work in that area. Okay. So they reached out to him and he met them in a pub in Oxford, and they essentially told him that they had experienced really, really horrific things at this compound in Lagos under TB Joshua's watch. And so Charlie started digging and then sort of brought everybody else into this. And yeah, 2 years later, here we are.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. And but what was the biggest challenge for you in terms of this? Because sometimes there's some moments of documentary where I was thinking to myself, are you for real? Like, I don't know, for example, there was a moment where there was a guy who was quite animated and he had a horsewhip with him, which I don't know where you guys got that horsewhip from. He started demonstrating how TB Joshua would beat people. But there's a moment he said something about, oh, well, TB Joshua was recruiting Westerners, which of course is code for white people in that regard, because his people were enslaved back in the day. And part of me just wondered, is that a guy who's speaking to a camera that he knows what they might want to hear, or is that a guy who's really interested? So did you get any moments where you're thinking, or?
No, because I think the risk for these people speaking out, like the person you're speaking about, has been on the run for years.
Yep.
Like, a lot of these people have faced death threats coming forward, harassment. They've really experienced some of the most horrific abuse I've ever heard of. They don't have anything to gain by coming forward and speaking in this way, and they have everything to lose by doing so.
Did you feel conflicted at all whilst making this?
I don't think I didn't feel, I mean, when Charlie sort of told me he was doing this, I kind of looked at him like he was insane. I was like, because at this point, TB Joshua was still alive.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are like, well, why did you guys do this? Because he's dead. This investigation started when he was alive. The intention was to publish it when he was alive. And when he brought it to me, I was like, oh my God, like, my family are going to kill me because every other day they're getting stuff about the investigations I'm doing, and now it's like I'm going after a pastor, and that's going to make things complicated.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel conflicted when I heard the stories of the survivors. I felt like this was something that was really important to get out.
Yeah.
At the same time, there were like precarious moments. Like, I lived in Nigeria at the time when we were doing this, and we spoke to sources who essentially said if people knew what we were doing, that our lives were in danger. One of my colleagues.
Do you feel safe now? Or should we abort
do you ever feel safe? Like,
Me?
doing investigative journalism? I don't know. I feel like it's kind of
I'm about 6 foot tall and I pack a good punch. I feel safe all the time, trust me.
I think it's like...
Strapped. Yep, absolutely. Yep, sorry, please.
You're
Yep.
so serious. Yeah, there were definitely moments, and then just sort of hearing about... Like, I grew up in church, innit? So... hearing some of the real deep sort of spiritual stuff, there were definitely times where I was having sleepless nights. I was like shook, and I couldn't really call anyone because you can't really tell them like what you're doing. So I was sort of rolling around in bed like, why the hell did I take this on? But at the same time, I feel like the survivors have risked so much, and by telling their stories, they're helping countless people who are still in these types of situations today. Because yes, TB Joshua was a huge pastor. He's not the only sort of person in a position of power that's still committing these type of abusive acts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Please, yeah. Sure. Auntie's on fire tonight. Yeah, please. Go ahead. Yeah, please. I'm sorry, let's give you a microphone. Sorry, wait 1 second. Your words are so important to us. We want to hear them. Yeah?
So, you know, you're saying that it's a pastor and you were digging up something, but I mean, immediately to my mind goes, okay, the Catholic Church and paedophilia and everything. So it's no different. But do you think that it fell into any of the kind of preconceived stereotypes that Westerners hold, and did it kind of debunk those, or do you think part of the process, and because of the BBC being involved and also wanting to present a story in a kind of a sexy way, was that compromised at all?
Were you tap dancing? Sorry.
So I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's really important to say that these allegations span like 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's not like this stuff started today. And there were other journalists, Nigerian journalists, who've been speaking about the abuses that were committed by TB Joshua for 20 years.
Yeah.
But people weren't listening. A lot of these people came forward, tried to go to Interpol, tried to go to the police, tried to go to other media outlets, and no one was listening. There's something that we discuss in the podcast about the fact that the BBC did commission this story, but they commissioned it when it was 2 white English girls that came forward and shared their stories. We do talk about that.
Integrity.
We discuss that because it was an important point. And Ray, who is one of the main characters, she said that the reason that people didn't care about this was because it happened in Africa. She said it plainly, that she knew. Like, a lot of people are aware of that, but it's something that obviously the media also has to interrogate about the types of stories that they tell and what kind of stories they deem worthy of telling. Because personally, I'm pretty sure that if this had happened in some church in Idaho somewhere, it wouldn't have taken 20 years for this to be a story or for somebody to commission it.
Please.
Based on that point.
Sorry, but do you want to grab a microphone or so?
That's quite a large voice. So based on that point, in terms of the Nigerian victims then, I mean, how were any of those who then, their stories in terms of, you know, how have they been helped in terms of the kind of issues that they faced? You talked about these two white women, the reason why the BBC commissioned the story, because there have been quite a lot of similar stories from other communities like this around spiritual healing and other things. And like you said, that they're quite sort of sexy sort of stories that they want to kind of get out about what's happening in these communities. Did you also feel conflicted as a black journalist as well, you know, highlighting your community in this way, and did you feel sort of conflicted about, again, that kind of trauma and around, you know, your duty and responsibility in a way to some of the black victims of this crime?
Thank you for that question. So we, in the podcast in particular, we really, and in the documentary, we do highlight a lot more, or a lot of the Nigerian victims, and we do make it a point to say that some of the Nigerian disciples, in particular Adegoke, who is TB Joshua's daughter, suffered some of the worst abuse. And that was something that was really important for us to get across. Like, of course, from a UK, like, the BBC is a British broadcaster paid for by British taxpayers, so they always kind of need that reason to sort of slant. But we do make sure that we honour the Nigerian victims and talk about the experiences that they went through, particularly Adegoke, who was his daughter. Whether I felt conflicted, I felt like once I heard the stories, because like I said, I grew up in church too, and kind of hearing about the widespread abuses that were happening in the name of God, it became really important for me, because I felt like religion, like living in Nigeria at the time, like religion is like the area that you just do not go. Pastors, men of God, touch not my anointed, all of that stuff. And then when he died, it's like, don't speak ill of the dead, all of that type of stuff. I felt like this is someone who, for all intents and purposes, until the documentary came out, his legacy was completely intact. There was a part in the podcast where I went around Lagos and were asking people, like, what do you think about TB Joshua? And everything was praise. He's perfect, he did this, he did that. And it got to me where I was like, nah, this can't run.
No, there's one point where you said that he bought people fried chicken, and I just was like, God damn, you went into the sewer stereotype of this one.
It's not a stereotype.
No,
it's
I know,
part
just
of
in
what
that
he
particular
did.
moment.
It's what he did.
I get what you
That's
mean.
what he did.
Look, we are pressed for time, and so there's one more question I really want to ask you. Look, you spent a decade digging deep in Africa, beating the pavements, you name it. So really unmasking people, pulling scumbags out from the ground, tearing presidents down. This is the only person, in fact, please put your hand in the air if you've ever been to the Central African Republic.
It's a beautiful country, by the way.
Put your hands in if you've ever met somebody who's from the Central African Republic.
It's a beautiful country.
You have?
It is.
Okay, fair enough. Other than these are the only three people in my life that I know who have ever met somebody from the Central African Republic. I don't even know what they're called. Central Africans or so.
Yeah, Central Africans.
South
That's
Africans.
it.
Fair enough. I got it. I just guessed that. But I want to ask you this question then. Just quick thing before we go, because I know I'm digging into the Honourable Dame Baptiste's time. Without saying Mandela, Lumumba, Sankara, or Mugabe, who are your top 5 African leaders? You can't say Gaddafi either, because you work for the BBC.
Top 5 African leaders. I can't answer that because my salary comes out of the BBC's thing, and I don't want to.
Got your tongue.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you as taxpayers don't want to hear my opinion on who the best African leaders are.
No,
I can't.
You gave us your opinion on TB Joshua. Anyway,
I can do that.
Yeah, because he's dead.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think, right? So look, sorry, we're just gonna have to run forward because everybody's here because they want to see. They want the trial of the Labour Party. Oh, go ahead. Let's hear what you got to say. Let's hear the tyrants.
Julius Nyerere.
Yes.
Sékou Touré.
Yes.
Patrice Lumumba.
We said we can't say Lumumba.
You said that, okay.
Yeah.
Kenneth Kaunda.
Of course.
And Nkrumah.
Yes, absolutely. There you go. Nkrumah's dead too. Most of those guys are dead. Why couldn't you mention any of them?
Can't say anything that would be deemed as impartial.
Anyway,
I need to get paid.
can we go to the Blackometer? Let's go to the Yemisi Adegoke. It's your turn on the Blackometer right now. So look, ladies and gentlemen.
Depends on who's like.
No.
Depends on who you put
We're
there.
going to see what happens. We're going to put it up on the
have
screen
to
right
stay
now.
impartial.
Let's hope the technology doesn't fail us.
I'm not Gary
Let's see
Lineker.
what we
I
could
can't
do.
afford to not be impartial. So
Let's see what we could do. So there we go. So
oh, my sister's there. Sorry, guys.
So-
My sister, Yemisi Adegoke, is there.
So who's the first person you want to see?
Sunday
So
Times
just explain to people who
best-selling
haven't been here before. This is the Blackometer. So it's the Bernie Badenoch scale of black politics. So on one side, we've got Bernie
What is this
Grant. Of
nonsense?
course, on one side we've got Bernie Grant, who's of course holding the Kalashnikov, looking out the window, making sure. And the other side we've got somebody who might be our prime minister by the end of the week, and I might be on the kill list or in Rwanda by the end of the week too. So we arrange people based upon where you think they stand in their politics, based on what they're projected to the general public. So we're going to start with a little-known author called
Hey,
Yemisi Adegoke. Let's see where you place her. Where would you place her? We better do this quickly because time.
Down.
Down to the left or down to the right?
Left.
Oh, that's
the
not
wrong
Yomi. That's
person.
Chimamanda. No, you're
Oh.
legend. Sorry, that's Yomi. Oh no, that's not Yomi.
There
Yes,
she
that is Yomi. See,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will place her towards the left because I actually know her.
Yeah, to the left, to the left, to the
Yeah,
left,
yeah.
to the left. There,
A little bit further left.
further to the left.
Keep her there. Yeah. No, too far back.
Okay.
Stop.
So, some conservative tendencies.
Not at all. No.
Okay, fair enough.
Yomi don't listen. Like,
She
that's
doesn't listen.
not
Okay.
what-
Should we go to who should we do next? You're not going to answer.
You know,
Tinubu,
there's
are
certain
you?
people. I'm not answering that.
Okay.
There's no way in hell.
Let's go to Akala.
I think he's quite left. Probably a bit further than Yomi, actually.
A bit further than
left
Yomi.
yeah.
Should we bring Akala down and then take him to whereabouts we're placing him?
Left. Yeah,
There?
I think that's fair.
Do we agree with this, guys?
Yeah.
That meets your perception index. Okay. Let's now go to Beyonce. Where are we going to put Beyonce?
Do you know what? I'm going to leave this one to the crowd because...
Okay, guys, she's chickening it out because she works for the BBC. Where are we putting
100%. Y'all
Beyonce?
ain't about to flog me today.
Sorry, where are we putting Beyonce, guys?
That one is on you guys.
On the what? You're putting Beyonce with Kemi Badenoch.
My mic is down.
Hold on. Stop. So, are we happy with Beyonce being a Blairite centrist?
Just to
Okay,
mark,
fair enough.
Yemisi Adegoke was
But
not
Matt
involved in
White,
this
former
decision.
record executive, he's here. That's where Beyonce belongs. There we go. So let's go with Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Where are you putting her?
Listen to the people then.
Where are you putting her, guys? To the right. Further to the right of Beyonce. To the left a bit, to the left. Are we happy here? Yep. Yemisi, this is your life.
The people are speaking.
Okay.
I'm a proponent of democracy, so
All right, fair
let
enough.
the people have it.
Should we go now with? Let's go with Bola Tinubu. Where are we putting him? To the right. To the right. To the right. To the right. That's the Nigerian. You guys are horrible. And then so that's the Nigerian president for people who don't know. That's our guy. That's the guy who's in charge of the largest population of black people on earth. And we put him to the right of Kemi Badenoch. We're in trouble. So where are we putting Julius Malema? Left. Juju, go to the left.
Yeah, that's fair.
Further to the left. We've lost Juju. Okay, further to the left. I think to the left of Akala or to the left of Akala. Left of Bernie. Okay, Juju goes out the scale too. Yep. And then
I'm curious.
Finally-
I'm actually curious about this. I want the audience to answer this one.
Hold on,
Yeah.
Yemisi, because you're allowed to speak about the BBC. So where are we putting BBC Africa?
I want the audience perception
Okay.
of that.
Where are we
The
putting
audience
BBC Africa,
perception of
guys?
That would be good. BBC Africa, not the BBC.
Where are we putting BBC Africa specifically?
guys.
In terms of center. You guys have a lot of faith. You've never worked for the BBC before. Okay, fair enough then. All right, can we move up slightly so we know it's somewhere so it's between Beyonce and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie?
Interesting.
There we go. Yemisi Adegoke, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Much appreciated.
Thank
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll see you in a second. All right, ladies. So the ladies and gentlemen and people and everybody, my people. You are here tonight for one thing and one thing only. And we are now here. This is what you call the main dish. Well, I'm sure there's some sort of French word for that also, but who knows anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, the majority of you are here tonight for the trial of the Labour Party. We're going to give you the trial of the Labour Party right now. I think this is an important time for, I'll just say a couple of words, I'm going to hand over to Dane. This is an important time, exceptionally important time for black and brown people in the United Kingdom. We're coming up to a landmark election after 13 years of rule, 14 years of rule, misrule, some would say, by the Conservative Party, to the point where we've seen a range of crazy stuff happen. We're now, it looks like we might be coming to the tail end of it. But no matter what happened throughout that time, whether the weather was good, whether the weather was bad, whether the economy was doing well, whether the economy was doing poorly or so, ethnic minorities always seem to vote for one party, which is the Labour Party. So it's giving one state dictatorship type, one party state vibes, but we are where we are. Tonight, we're going to really have a thorough examination of the relationship between ethnic minorities and the Conservative Party. I beg your pardon. And the Labour Party. And the Labour. I've got the Tories on. I'm writing a book about the Tories, so yeah. So the Tories are on my mind. We're gonna have a debate tonight about Can we get these two chairs removed, please? Yeah. So we're having a debate about the ethnic minorities and the Labour Party, and it's really, really important that we do so. And I am immensely proud. Normally Curtis Walker's here, but we are absolutely honoured to have another comedy institution and an absolute intellectual of significant magnitude to come actually take the reins. And I just want to say one final thing. They said to us that we might all face conscription shortly. And that is a very serious thing. That is a very, very serious thing. Because we might have to discuss whether or not you would all fight for Britain at another day. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hand the microphone over to the would-be General of the South London Black Brigade. This time next year, when I'm in Lagos, he'll be there fighting the Russians on your behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother, the great Dane Baptiste.
Thank you very much.
I'll swear you in.
Thank you.
I'll swear you in first of all.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, so have we got some sound of this? So Dane Baptiste, I'll try to grab that from you, and then we'll take it from there. So Dane Baptiste, in the power that we're entrusting onto you as judge tonight, do you swear, I beg your pardon? We're going to ask you to solemnly swear to seek the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, without fear or favour, so help you, whoever's book you've actually issued, whichever author you've decided to swear on.
Hey, I am the Right Honourable Dane Baptiste, as you can tell from this very expensive gown. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and the black adjacent to our friends and allies in here. If that's who you actually are. And I hereby swear on this paperback copy of any ideologies why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. So help me God, or whichever secular institution you pray to. So, do I still get a script, Nels, or?
Yes, you do. Sorry.
Yeah, that's probably.
Beg your pardon.
Begin by introducing the case. Thank you, everyone, for coming. The darker the skin of the voter, the more likely they are to vote Labour. May sound like a 1970s power-like Conservative Party election slogan, but it happens to be a fact. No matter the political, social, or economic weather, the Labour Party always performs fantastically better with ethnic minorities than any other group. Now, does that mean that they are always undeniably working great for ethnic minorities? We're about to find out if Labour is working for ethnic minorities, or is it time for ethnic minorities to ditch the Labour Party? The prosecution and defence teams will be announced shortly. The jury, however, is everybody in here. All members of the audience will be required to vote on the outcome of this debate and are encouraged to contribute to the debate by raising your point of blackness. You will have found voting cards on all of your seats. Your votes will be collected at the end of the debate, and the results will be announced shortly afterwards. Ladies and gentlemen, and those of you who might identify as non-binary, because we want to be inclusive as possible here, and we recognise our non-binary members of the black community. Fine, you can be silent if you choose. Not really helping our case, guys. But Everyone, welcome to the trial of the Labour Party.
Dane, just one thing. The
Yes.
voting cards will be handed round shortly. We're just getting them prepared right now.
Right, okay, cool. Would anyone like to raise a point of blackness before we begin? You all seem quite quiet. Fine, I didn't go to law school. Are you happy, everyone? But I have been in Tyrone's position, though. And I have questioned HR, which I think stands for hot refreshments. About why the corporate culture is not meritocratic, and I got a disciplinary, and now I tell jokes for a living. So that's how well that went. My former manager was actually on The Apprentice in the second season. She didn't do great. Her name is Naomi Lay. I'm snitching on her now. And in case you're wondering, she reckons she didn't win because Alan Sugar is also a Jew. That is a direct quote from her. And I said that on camera, I don't care. You guys relax, it's okay. Don't take me too seriously. Are these cards been distributed yet?
No, they'll go as we're talking on.
All right, cool. Right, well, while the voting cards are being distributed, I want to introduce the prosecution and the defence of the Labour Party, so please show them all your love and support as they present their arguments. Prosecuting the Labour Party will be lead prosecutor Abba Vidal, writer and political commentator. Academic and author of Black Resistance to British Policing, Dr. Adam Elliott Cooper. LBZ presenter, financier and DJ and the founder of the Contrarian Prize, Ali Miraj. And defending the Labour Party will be leading the defence, member of the Labour Party's National Executive Committee, Abdi Douale. Former Labour councillor Johnson Situ. Johnson is currently shortlisted to be Labour parliamentary candidate for Croydon East, and political analyst and founder of online series Everything is Political, Basayo Twins. So thank you for welcoming our prosecution and our defence. Should we get into it, Nels?
Let's get into it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, presenting her first argument, lead prosecutor Abba Vidal.
How do you have a mic stand? I don't know this.
Oh, what's that?
Good evening, everybody. I was introduced as a political commentator. I don't know how that happened. I'm actually a comedian. I was just able to string sentences together, so they just kept asking me to do stuff, and I was just
So, Abba, once you're out of minutes or so, we'll clap in the background, just give you a signal. I'll just clap my hands pretty loudly as I can.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I have to swear, right?
Yes, you do have to swear in. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Based upon what's there, Dane will swear you in. Yeah. Somehow in there, yeah.
Okay. Abba Vidal, with the power entrusted me as a judge, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth without fear of favour, so help you? Cool. Well, then the floor is yours to present your argument.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and NBs. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, Muslims, and hello, infidels. I am here to argue against the Labour Party. I got brought into this after appearing on LBC and just innocently commentating that I didn't actually want to vote for anyone because I cannot actually see the difference between the Labour Party at the moment and the Conservative Party. And that cued a lot of abuse from white men going, "How dare you not want to vote? People fought for you to vote." I was like, yeah, they fought you. I think the problem I have at the moment, I was a Labour supporter. I was a Labour supporter under Jeremy Corbyn. I used to stand up for Labour. I think the problem that people have is you cannot talk about the Labour Party as being one continuous movement. They are not. The Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn is a very different Labour Party than it is under Keir Starmer. The Labour Party have for years been able, and I don't like the idea that you know, they try to say that we're sort of a monolith and we're brainwashed. We don't know what we're doing as black people. We just decide that we're going to vote Labour because we've always been told to vote Labour. That is not true at all. I actually confess, I did actually go to boarding school. I went to public school, so I actually really on paper should be a Tory. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, the Tory public school to Tory pipeline is right there, and unfortunately I didn't take it. I went the left-wing way, which proved to be a mistake, because there is no money in that. So the Labour Party isn't one continuous movement. For instance, in the 1960s, not many people have realised that when Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, as some might know him, came to this country, there was a group, I know it's terrible, called the Information Research Department. And what their goal was to stoke tensions between black people, cause problems. And actually, when Stokely Carmichael was deported and not allowed back into this country, that was actually done under a Labour government. So to believe that the Labour government are one continuous, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And they did some very, very damaging things to the black community. Like I said, they stoked a lot of tension between us. They actually made a fake black group to argue with people who were following Stokely Carmichael. And one of the things that they did was they caused a lot of tension between the African community and the Caribbean community. Some of that tension is still around today, but don't worry. I'm half Bajan, half Dominican. I slept with a lot of Nigerian men to bring those two communities together. And thank you, you're welcome. What the hell? No one would think I work with it. What the hell? Right, yes, so yeah, the Labour Party have always been involved in doing things to undermine the black community. And when it really became like the black community have seen Labour as their natural home, that really became popular after the Smethwick by-election. Do you remember that? That was in the part of Birmingham. And it was so racist and disgusting that the Conservative Party candidate had brought this saying out that if you want a M-word for a neighbour, vote Labour. And Labour have dined out on that ever since without doing the work. And actually it's quite insulting the way that they just expect that we should vote for them without them actually doing anything for us. Like I said, it's a very different incarnation under Keir Starmer, who is, I think he's the worst Labour leader yet. He is snivelling, duplicitous, inconsistent, and he talks like his nose is full of snot. And I'm sorry, the reason that I'm saying, like, I don't understand. If the Labour Party want to continue to have our votes, really? Oh, God, I had so many things to slag them off for. Well, basically, the Labour Party have U-turned on pretty much everything they did. I was going to read out 23 U-turns, but obviously I'm not going to. But I will just tell you, there was a shadow cabinet member today called Peter Kyle, who has said, they're not even dog whistling anymore with their racism, they're just coming out with it. He said, is it right that people who are in areas where there is a real acute challenge with housing know that housing does go to people who are born and raised in certain communities? And we know what that's like. The Labour Party have not allowed black people to progress through their ranks. If you actually, the Tories are actually taking the pee, because you look at their whole front bench and it is full of black and brown people. So younger people who are growing up looking at politics and want to progress will probably think, why wouldn't I go to the Tory party rather than the Labour Party? I mean, the Labour Party don't have anybody black in their shadow cabinet apart from that man whose neck looks like one of those round life jacket things. Do you know what I mean? So he needs to do something about that. Also, people do not realise the biggest scandal that we've had, our parents, our parents who came here, especially like my parents, I'm a child of the Windrush generation. We have seen what has happened to our elders in the past few years. And yes, the Tory party were the ones that had destroyed the landing cards, but what many people don't actually realise is that the Labour Party are the ones who'd made that decision to destroy the landing cards in the first place. So I would just say to you, when you think about the Labour Party, do not think of them as a single entity. And remember what Mama Maya taught us. She said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Keir Starmer has shown us repeatedly who he is. He's actually, he just sits there and thinks that our votes are guaranteed. Keir Starmer is so two-faced and he lies so much. He says one thing to one community, then he turns and says something to the other community. Just last night they had a reception with the LGBT community and they were all draped in rainbow flags and trans flags. And just today, West Streeting announced that they are going to ban trans people, trans women from women's wards in hospital. And it's like, my God, like they do so many U-turns, they literally have whiplash. I did want to say also, Keir Starmer did commission a report from a barrister called Martin Ford, and he asked them to look into anti-blackness in the Labour Party as well as Islamophobia. And Martin Ford did so and found them wanting, and Keir Starmer just stopped talking to him. I mean, he just decided he wasn't going to answer anymore. I don't know what he expected to come back. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God. He told him to do a report. When it didn't say what he wanted to say, he just decided to blank absolutely everything in it. And Martin Ford, I will read a quote from Martin Ford. Sorry, guys. Martin Ford had actually said that he had found... OK, he's telling me to shut up. Anyway, listen, all I'm going to say is don't vote Labour. Please don't vote Labour until they decide to work for our votes and respect us as a community, black people and Muslim people too, because I'm both.
If you haven't received the voting card, you can put your hand up so we can see. Okay, that's fine. So we know what to try and do again. Oh, yeah, that's all right.
Okay, guys, moving swiftly on. The Court of Black Public Opinion, presenting leading argument for the defence. We call to the stage Abdi Douale. Okay, sorry. Abdi Douale.
Sorry. Get your face up this way because of the camera.
Yes. I'll go this side.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Abdi Douale, do you swear with the power trust of me, Judge, to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, without fear of favour, so help you... notepad. Yes. Now I leave it to you to present the leading defence argument for the Labour Party.
Thank you very much, and thank you for starting us off with... I don't know how to match that. I mean, I am somewhat nervous about this. Look, I became a member of Labour's National Executive only a year and a half ago, and I became the first black man to ever sit on Labour's National Executive Committee. So I will be the first person to talk about the inefficiencies that exist within the Labour Party when it comes to equality, when it comes to representation. I think the notion that ethnic minorities owe the Labour Party a God-given right to exist or to vote for them is a false one. I don't think the Labour Party has a God-given right to exist or a God-given right to expect ethnic minorities to vote for the Labour Party. The Labour Party, every single time, at every single election, needs to win the trust of voters everywhere. But what I want to talk about is the historic link that exists between the Labour Party and ethnic minorities and why that vote... why people vote for the Labour Party. The first point to mention is the Labour Party is really bad at winning elections, actually. The Labour Party existed for over 120 years, and in those years, only less than 30 of them, the Labour Party has been in government. So let's take that record, because that's the record that exists for the Labour Party, what we've done in government. In 1965, 1966, the Labour Party... at the time, introduced the Race Relations Act. In 2000, off the back of the Stephen Lawrence death, the Labour Party made an amendment to that to ensure that all public bodies have a duty to promote equality within their organisations. In 2010, the Labour Party introduced the Equality Act, a significant legislation that exists today that protects people of ethnic minority and people of different characteristics or from discrimination. Those are a couple of legislations that I've mentioned, but you take all the other achievements that the Labour Party has achieved. introducing the minimum wage, maternity leave, paternity leave, a lot of things that have benefited ethnic minorities in this country. But that's the history, and that's all well and good. You're probably going to ask me, what is the Labour Party offering me now? And that is a fair question. When the Ford report came out 2 years ago, so it was originally commissioned by Keir Starmer when he became leader of the Labour Party, and Ford came back, Martin Ford, Casey, came back with 165 recommendations. It's unfair and untrue to say the Labour Party has ignored them, because we've implemented 154 of those recommendations as of last week. What the report found was something that lots of anyone in the Labour Party knows, that discrimination exists within the Labour Party, that, black candidates tend to face tougher selections because of the colour of their skin. So what we did off the back of that report was to actually change the Labour Party internally, to introduce a new code of conduct. But more importantly, Afrophobia training. How many political parties in the UK can say today that they have Afrophobia training? We've commissioned Patrick Vernon and Martha Cuffey to introduce that. Well, it's true. How do you expect our political representatives to actually represent our communities if they don't understand the issues we face? You can't expect them to. So that training is really, really vital. But more importantly, there's no other political party in the country that is spending tens of thousands of pounds training black candidates. The Bernie Grant programme, which was set up by Dawn Butler in 2019, which we reintroduced this year as well, is training 30 people, 30 black candidates that we've taken from different parts of the country. So take Scotland, for example. Scotland has never had an elected public official that is black from any political party in its existence. For us, that's a disgrace. But it's a disgrace for the country as well. And there are black people who exist in Scotland. So that diversity for us matters, and actually training black people in Scotland matters, but training black people right across the country as well matters. Wales is a very good example. Vaughan Gethings is a leading light of the Labour Party and running to be leader of Welsh Labour at the moment as we speak. But again, he's the only one that's existed there as well. So I'm not saying the Labour Party is perfect, and the Labour Party, you don't owe your vote to the Labour Party, but the Labour Party is a damn sight better than what we've got at the moment. And we haven't been in power for the last 14 years, in which public services have been run down to the ground. Are you stopping me?
No, you hit 4 minutes.
Okay,
right.
Brilliant. Public services have been run down to the ground, and it's quite hard to actually say, we're going to give you a message of hope and we're going to do this. But the economy is near tanking. We saw what Liz Truss did to it last year. We've got a Conservative Party that is willing to stoke culture wars left, right and centre, and to pick on the most vulnerable people in our society, and you see it in their language and in their deliberations. We have to rise above that, and we have to offer the country an alternative of hope, but we have to be realistic about what we deliver as well. And that's why, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be launching our Race Equality Act and what that's going to look like. Doreen Lawrence, Baroness Lawrence, has been working away at that since the aftermath of COVID, and that's looking at all the inequalities we know exist, but COVID highlighted even more. So in the workplace, in education, in healthcare, in every institution that exists in this country, discrimination exists as well. And we want to look into that and actually give voters the option, give voters a clear idea of what we're going to do in government, and that will be launched soon. So in the run-up to the election, we will make clear what we're going to do about the country. But the reality is we haven't been in government for 14 years, and it's going to take a lot of time to bring the country back into a decent place. Thank you.
Ask both the leading prosecutor who you would like from the prosecution to present their argument next as a rebuttal to Abdi's initial statement.
I call Adam Elliott Cooper, please.
Adam Elliott Cooper. Okay. Dr. Cooper, with the power entrusted to me as judge, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, without fear of favour, so help you, a piece of paper with jottings on it?
I certainly do.
The floor is yours to present a rebuttal.
Yeah, I could swear my own book. Right. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So I want to begin by thinking about the main defence that is often used by black Labour supporters when they're trying to convince their comrades to kind of join into the Labour Party. And that, of course, is the reproduction of that famous phrase popularised by Margaret Thatcher, there is no alternative. And maybe it's slightly ironic that supporters of the Labour Party reduced themselves to a phrase popularised by Margaret Thatcher in trying to convince us to vote for the Labour Party. But I'm going to try and think about it in a little bit more detail as I skip through three kind of broad areas of Labour Party policy: foreign policy, economic policy, and of course, good old British justice. So Labour's foreign policy has been, I would say, fairly consistent over the years. If we start with 1919, Labour's policy platform supported the colonialism of, and I quote here, the moral claims upon us of the non-adult races. And here we all are today, past our bedtimes. Labour's first colonial secretary, J.H. Thomas, would tolerate, quote, no mucking about with the British Empire as he sent the RAF to bomb Iraq, something that they got very used to indeed. And of course, the war in Iraq being one of the most damaging stains in Britain's history as well as the Labour Party's history should perhaps make it no surprise that when the images of what's taking place across Gaza lead many people in the Labour Party, including its leader, to have the opportunity to vote to end that carnage and say, nah, carry on. Economic policy. I would say one of the key aspects of Britain's economic policy under New Labour anyway, of course, has been privatisation. We'd probably have twice as many people here if the privatised railways weren't currently on strike. And despite the fact that black and Asian people are overrepresented in further and higher education, that's a very, very good thing. But of course, it does mean, of course, that we're now overrepresented in the enormous student debt we've been saddled with that Labour Party puts no opposition against when it was voted through back in 2010. But I think the most damaging form of privatisation that we've seen from the Labour Party has been their development of Margaret Thatcher's policies. From Margaret Thatcher's PPPs, the public-private partnership, was transformed by Tony Blair to the PFI, the Public Finance Initiative. Privatisation of the NHS through the back door. What Wes Streeting, the current Shadow Health Secretary, says we're too nostalgic about, as he demands we open the door to private entrepreneurs. Well, I would tell him that the black community is not nostalgic about healthcare. It is fundamental to our well-being. But crucially as well, these public services are fundamental to our employment, have been historically and continue to be today. And we are not nostalgic about our life or our livelihoods. We are realistic about it. But finally, of course, I want to talk a little bit about justice. Now, I think we should have all, of course, remembered that it was in the 1970s that the good old Labour Party introduced the Sus laws, even if Margaret Thatcher likes to take the credit for repressing the rebellions that they led to. And as Tony Blair kneeled to pray with George W. Bush before illegally invading Iraq, killing hundreds of thousands, he then returned to domestic policy with this speech. What we are dealing with is not a generic social order, but specific groups of people who, for one reason or another, are deciding not to abide by the same code of conduct as the rest of us. The black community. The vast majority of whom in these communities are decent, law-abiding people, horrified by what's happening, but they need to be mobilised in denunciation of this gang culture that's killing innocent young black kids. And we won't stop this by pretending it isn't young black kids who are doing it. So the racialised crimes in the war on terror, so-called black-on-black crime, or being an illegal immigrant, now popularised by the culture wars which are being fought by the Conservative Party, see their genesis under Tony Blair's New Labour. And Tony Blair's New Labour didn't just say this in word, they did it in deed as well. With Tony Blair introducing 3,000 new criminal offences, a new crime for every day that he was in office, compared to around only 500 under the previous Conservative governments over the same scale. We see more deportation under Tony Blair than we did under the Tories, and unsurprisingly, with this massive increase in crimes, we see the prison population in this country almost double. More and more people being incarcerated, more and more people behind bars, as we see funding for prisons, but very little for our communities. But how can, of course, Keir Starmer be held responsible for this? How possibly can we hold him responsible for this unprecedented, racist explosion in public prosecutions? Yes, indeed, Tony. Keir Starmer can be held very much responsible for this explosion in the lack of justice in our justice system. He has been fundamental to the incarceration and criminalisation of our communities while crucial services are being defunded. And so I think we should be unsurprised when Margaret Thatcher is asked, what is your greatest legacy, Mrs. Thatcher? When she can assertively say, it is New Labour. And that is what we're being asked to vote for tonight.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cooper. The floor is open for the defence to provide a rebuttal. Mr. Duale, who would you like to select to present a defence argument?
I picked Messiah Twins.
Messiah Twins. Yep. Messiah, with the power entrusted to me as judge, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, without fear or favour, so help you think like a white man by Nels Abbey?
I do. I promise. I swear.
The floor is yours to present your defence argument.
Thank you. Okay, let me start off by giving you a disclaimer. I do not like the Labour Party. I have never been, nor will I ever be, a member of the Labour Party. And currently, there's nothing about the Labour Party leadership that I can respect. No offence to my team. This is not a love letter to the Labour Party. This is merely a reminder that the British political system favours strategy over morality. And the extent to which the Labour Party is serving ethnic minorities is the same extent to which our own political naivety, lack of organisation, and political illiteracy serves us. So upon these reflections, in a roundabout way, this serves as an unexpected defence of the Labour Party. So hear me out, because I know I've got naysayers, right? Hear me out, hear me out. The Labour Party is merely one of many strategic vehicles of social advancement for ethnic minority communities, by default of our urban geography and economic class. That is it. The history of the Labour Party and ethnic minorities is one where they recognize the significance of the economic class in a capitalist and two-party system to draw attention to our specific racialized experiences and injustices by holding on to and revealing the discrepancies in the Labour Party's socialist agenda. Essentially, what we do historically is attach our issues to their issues, hoping that our priorities become their priorities. Why? Because this is a capitalist system. This is Britain, the architects of racism, imperialism. For us to expect that they, in the absence of us, will be anti-racist reveals our own misunderstanding about British politics. There's an expectation that we have that in our absence, someone will advocate for us. But the history of us meant that it's in spite of our disillusion that Labour Party members and activists were determined to make sure our issues are on the agenda. That is it. Beyond that, Labour just serves as the bare minimum prerequisite for any material gain for ethnic minorities, in addition to the many other levers of change that we must utilise and admit that we haven't done. We can't turn up every 4 years during an election cycle and hope our tweets and Instagram posts affected foreign and domestic policy. That's not how it works. We have to recognise that collective through collective consistent action, multi-layer strategy is the only way for us to make sure that in the two-party system we have a voice, but doing the real work on the ground. That is it. In a more direct way, is the Labour Party working for ethnic minorities? And the reality is, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Because someone keeps voting for David Lammy. Okay? There's someone out there. So maybe when we talk about us, who is this us? Are we assuming that all of us are the same? Someone brought up free Palestine, free Gaza, but it's many people like us who didn't say free Palestine. Let's be real. If we can't agree on stopping a genocide, what makes you think we can agree on the NHS? So maybe now we have to realize that maybe what separates us politically is more powerful than what joins us due to our shared discrimination. And maybe race, seen as a social construct, is not the most obvious and natural way to align yourself politically. Since they gave it to us, how can we utilize that politically? It's about strategy, not expecting anything from the architects of racism, but instead using what you have to make sure that whichever party it is, our issues stay on the agenda. Now ask yourself very honestly, where have you been for the last 4 years? Outside of tweeting, outside of posting, where have you been? Have you organized? Or did you think the gains that we made all these years came from one post, from one protest, from your outrage? Now, don't get me wrong, we should shame the Labour Party. We should punish them in any way you guys see fit. But at the end of the day, the question remains, unless you withdraw from the two-party system, what comes next? Once we show everyone that we're not just blindly following the Labour Party because we're too preoccupied with what people think about us if we do vote for the Labour Party, there's many different reasons to vote for the Labour Party. But if you're preoccupied with having to defend the fact that you do, you've misunderstood party politics, and you're more of a threat to the system than the Labour Party probably is. Thank you.
Now leaves for the final argument from the prosecution to be presented by Ali Miraj. Ali Miraj, with the power entrusted to me as judge, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, without fear of favour, so help you the glorious Quran?
I do, Your Honour.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honour, and members of the jury, you have a very, very important decision to make this evening, which is where to cast your vote, and more importantly, whether your vote should be taken for granted by a party that has consistently taken you for granted for the best part of 70 years. And the question is this: not whether you should not vote for the Labour Party, but you should actually think about doing it before you do so. I know that the bar is very low at the moment in terms of British politics as to what qualifies as a decent government. I mean, come on. I mean, anything would be better than the lot we have now, I understand. So it's difficult to defend what we've got at the moment. But let me just offer you three things to think about when you make this decision. The first is that ethnic minorities are not a monolithic bloc. When we think about ethnic minorities, this is the failure. This is what always happens, particularly on the left. They always think that ethnic minorities are some monolithic bloc, that they all vote the same, they all think the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. Just think about Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who actually was center on the screen there, which I was quite pleased to see. She warned us in 2009 of the danger of a single story. Do not assume that every person who's black and brown thinks the same. This is the danger. This is exactly what the left do. So, for example, when you have people like Suella Braverman or Kemi Badenoch or all these people who I have no time for whatsoever, but to simply believe that because of the color of their skin, they should have a particular viewpoint on the world, how racist is that? That is bizarre, to just think because of skin color that they should actually advocate for a certain view, even though they genuinely don't actually believe it for whatever reasons, for their history, their background, whatever it may be. So you cannot assume that we are one unit. Also, just look at the census in 2021. 9% of the population is of South Asian origin, 4% black, 2.9% others. So it is a disparate community, and that should be borne in mind. The second thing to remember is that if you look at the Labour Party and the monopoly that it has had, that monopoly that has lasted from the 60s to the 70s, all the way through to when David Cameron became leader of this country in 2010, that monopoly is not what it was. You just look at the front bench of the government party at the moment, and you have a situation where you have ethnic minorities in the Conservative Party, for heaven's sake, with no positive discrimination whatsoever, competing last year for the leadership. 6 out of the 11 leadership contenders in the first round were black or brown. And there were quite a few women in that, too. 4 out of the 8 in the shortlist were also from ethnic minorities. So this monopoly that the Labour Party has consistently had is shattered, it's broken. And I can tell you this, 40% of British Indians voted for Brexit. Just ponder that for a second. And I can also tell you on good authority that in places like Moore Park, which is west of London in Hertfordshire, which is full of up-and-coming, aspiring Indian, very wealthy people, not very many of them are voting Labour at all. Where are they voting? They're voting Tory, and if they want to hold their nose, they just about manage to vote Lib Dem. So that's what's happening. The monopoly of the Labour Party is broken. And thirdly, just think about this. Think about the issues themselves, the issues that actually matter to you. And what are they? I don't know. Everyone has their own issues, apart from trying to get a decent crust on the table, trying to actually advance your kids' education, trying to have a decent life, trying to not get stabbed on the street when you walk out of here. That wouldn't happen, of course. It's a very civilized place, Shoreditch. I used to DJ down the road for 6 years. I know, it's all right. It's all right here. But the point is this. You think about what your actual issues are. Are they around education, getting a decent education, being able to keep down a job, the discrimination that black and brown people still face in the workplace in terms of the amount that they get paid and the opportunities that they get. And this is not to say that I'm a believer in structural discrimination, because I'm not. I think it's a fallacy, but I do think there are issues that need to be addressed. I'm not one of these people who just simply says that everything is structurally racist and we must all believe in critical race theory, and therefore we must hold our hands up and just say, none of this is on me, I have no agency at all. I think that's completely wrong. But look, education and employment is one. Health is another one. I can see someone disagreeing with me here. This will be very interesting. Another one is health. Some of the fundamental inequalities in the health system. Think about that. It was mentioned before about foreign policy. I mean, foreign policy, when it comes to the Labour Party, give me a break, for heaven's sake. I mean, the biggest thing that's happening right now, and I say this as someone who believes that Israel has an absolute right to defend itself, but not in the way it is doing. It is completely and utterly diminishing its own arguments at the moment by what it's actually doing right now. And you look at the Labour Party, have they said a peep of anything about this? No, they're absolutely squarely following the government line. So my appeal to you is this. If you want to vote Labour, be my guest. But for heaven's sake, don't be taken for granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. By process of elimination, it just leaves for final argument for the defence, Jonathan Situ, former Labour councillor. Jonathan, with the power... Johnson even, sorry, apologies. Johnson, with the power entrusted to me as judge, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, without fear or favour, so help you...
William Kamkwamba.
Okay. Well, that being said, Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. One of the perks of going last is usually you can say you agree with everybody that's gone before you. In this case, I can't. But one thing I will talk about is actually one thing everybody's agreed on, is that the Labour Party can't take minority communities for granted. And it's my assertion that it's not. So I'll illustrate this by a couple of points, if you indulge me. It's the 21st of June, 1948. It's a sunny afternoon in Kingston, Jamaica. There's anticipation in the air. There's a bit of excitement. But it's probably tinged with a little bit of sadness, as the 1,027 passengers get ready to set sail for a new life. They will face great injustices. They'll face racism. But for now, they've answered the call to come and help rebuild Britain. A young 22-year-old is part of those over 1,000 waiting to set sail. A carpenter by trade. He's no ordinary 22-year-old. He has just returned from the RAF fighting fascism. Sam King. He will also face racism, and he trained in Filey in Yorkshire, so knows Great Britain quite well and wants to settle in Nottingham. When he arrives, he rejoins the RAF and then goes on to work at the Royal Mail. And he talks about his journey quite candidly in an interview in 2015, which marked 50 years on from the Race Relations Act. He said, in his own words, it was the Race Relations Act which offered opportunities for not just his son, but also his granddaughter to be able to fulfill their potential. And that is central to my argument today. Two assertions. Firstly, it is the Labour Party at moments that matter, which has stood up for ethnic minorities. Not just in words, but in deeds. The Race Relations Act in 1965, the amendment to the Race Relations Act in 1968, the Race Relations Act in 1976, the amendment to the Race Relations Act in 2000, and also the Equality Act in 2010, all under a Labour government. And so when we look at the record of the Labour Party, it's quite clear it has stood up for minority communities and working communities at the moments that matter. My second assertion is this. It is the Labour Party that has stood for progressive policy. And perhaps it is why Sam King joined the Labour Party. It's certainly why my parents travelled from Nigeria to the UK and why countless others have done a similar journey from right across the world. And second and third generation people have got involved in politics because they believe society can be fairer. They believe opportunities can be shared. And they also believe in a more prosperous society. Simply put, it is the Labour Party over the years that have given birth to those opportunities and provided hope to that fruition. It was the Labour Party when families were struggling just after the Second World War, when the Labour Health Minister, Anaya Bevin, announced that actually people wouldn't have to suffer because they fall ill and birthed the NHS. It was the Labour Party in the 70s which sought to harness the technology to be able to ensure that we could eradicate poverty and seek to address disease as well. And it was the Labour Party at the turn of the millennium which sought to address childhood poverty by saying actually a Labour Prime Minister, a child born in a housing estate should have the exact same chances as a child born in a leafy borough. I'm going to get that. What I will say is this. So people vote for the Labour Party. Not out of a sense of misguided loyalty, but a sense of knowing that actually it's the Labour Party that will deliver because they have delivered so much before. And it's the Labour Party who is promising a new Race Relations Act. It's the Labour Party that is promising to invest in the NHS to get it back on its feet. It's the Labour Party that is promising new housing. And it is the Labour Party that is promising to address inequality. So I'll end on this note. The Labour Party still is the party working for ethnic minorities. Not out of a sense of misguided loyalty, and not out of a sense of misguided placement of support and seeking to get votes. It is the Labour Party over the decades that has consistently been at the vanguard of progressive policies. And I'll end on this. When you seek to vote later on, ask yourself the simple question. Who has sought to bring forward their ideas in policies and deeds, not words? And also, who over the decades has been able to bring forward their policies in government? Thank you.
Thank you, Johnson. We are going to open up the floor for your points of blackness to be raised. I'm sure you've got a lot of things to say. Ali, are you shooting off, or do you have time? Because Ali does have to shoot off, so I wanted to give him his closing argument for which about 90 seconds, a minute to 90 seconds. Be very quick, and then we'll open up the floor, everybody. So, some of your patience.
It's really kind. I'm so sorry. No, look, thank you very much. Fantastic arguments, I think, from all sides. All I would say is that if you look at the front bench of this discredited government, there are a lot of ethnic minorities on it. So this monopoly that was held by the Labour Party has been shattered. I think you should think very, very carefully about your vote. I think it should not be taken for granted. I don't think the Labour Party is actually offering much at all, apart from a change because people are fed up. Is that a good enough reason to give them your vote? Maybe it is. But my message to you, as it was before, is simply don't be taken for granted by a bunch of people who have just got used to relying on your vote. It's worth much more than that. Think about the policies and actually challenge and cast your vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. Okay, so, guys, I'm sure you've heard some very compelling arguments. The floor is now open to hear your points of view.
Point of blackness. I'll just
start here.
Dave, can I just Can I go first, just to just
It's your thing. You should do. Yeah, you go ahead.
exercise my authority, as they say. Look.
Thought I was a judge, but all right, Nels.
So I just thought. Apologies, brother. Yes, you're right. Quick question. Thank you very much for all your contributions. It's a very quick question from me, and it's rooted in metaphor for blackness to a certain degree. Some of you who were here last month may have heard it before. The 2012 Quentin Tarantino film Django Unchained contained 2 black male characters representing 2 different viewpoints of blackness. Their names were Django and Stephen. Which of these 2 characters would go further in Keir Starmer's Labour Party?
Remember, if you have an answer, point of blackness, say point of blackness. So the gentleman here first, and we'll go to the lady across there.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Well, first of all, I heard this point raised a couple of times by the prosecution about the number of black and brown people in the Tory cabinet. The cabinet, who cares? They're all anti-black. Makes no difference to me. All right. But the point I want to raise is that there's a whole lot of pandering going on. Rishi Sunak is doing his best to cosplay a white supremacist. And as far as the Labour Party goes, they're clearly serving 2 groups. I'm going to keep it real. Hope no one's offended. There are 2 groups that the Labour Party are serving at the moment. The Jewish community is one, and winning back the red wall is another, right? Now, as far as the Jewish community goes, there's nothing wrong with serving the Jewish community, but that is more of a reaction to the quite effective smear campaign that the Tories executed on Jeremy Corbyn during the last election. And that community is being used, by the way, by both parties, but that's a different argument from a different day. It's not my fight. But as far as the red wall, that's just a race to the bottom and really just a reaction to the cultural crap that comes out of the Tory party. But at the end of the day, the black community doesn't benefit. We don't benefit at all. In actual fact, the pandering is to our detriment. So what do? Well, I mean, I don't believe in not voting. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in just staying at home. I'd rather us go and spoil our ballot papers in a coordinated fashion than just not do anything. But the Labour Party are taking the black community for granted, most definitely. But this is the danger. If Labour win the election, and our concerns are not listened to, and we're not represented. But then the Tories end up, Kemi Badenoch becomes their leader, lead into another election at some point, and she wins, becomes Prime Minister. I don't know, it's probably worse for the black community, right? That's probably worse than anything that we've dealt with. But on the other hand, I believe the Tories remain in power, they'll just double down in this far-right nonsense because that's all they got. So I really don't know. But one thing I will say, though, I think it's imperative that the Tories are removed from power because we've had enough. Enough is enough.
I think more concise that the answer there was Stephen. So you had a lady over here.
Thank you. I'm going to try and be polite. I'm going to try. I really should have written some notes because there was a lot of stuff that was said. But what I will say is that I think both the Labour Party and the Tory Party love to rest on representation politics. And the brother over there already mentioned it. We're at this point where it is nice to see people who look like you in places of power. It's nice. It can be empowering to see a black woman. But if you're just going to be the master's slave, then it doesn't really make a difference, as he said. The second thing is that a lot of the arguments to vote for Labour were things that they had done when many of us probably weren't alive, like 200 years ago. And I think that was great for then. But if we look at what is happening now, Labour are supposed to be the opposition party. And there are a lot of things that have been done by the Tory party that I feel like most of us in this room, or most of us on Twitter, are the opposition party at this point. There are many major things that the Tory government have done or have said, and then Labour will come along and basically agree with all of them, right? And I think one of the main things that if for the last however many years you've not made a decision on, you know, who to vote for, I think the most pressing issue for a lot of people, particularly for me, is how the government have responded to what's happening in Palestine. I think we could talk about the NHS, we could talk about knife crime, we could talk about healthcare, we could talk about a lot of things. But for a government to be complicit in a genocide and then for Labour to come along and say, yeah, let's continue with that. No. Right? I think that they do rest on the whole two-party politics thing, and I won't get into that, but I think it's important for us to also understand that there are parties that do exist outside of Labour and Tory. I know it's a two-party system, but we also vote locally, right? So you need to engage with what's happening in your community locally. At this point in time, I would actually probably just prefer to stay with the Tory government, because at least I know who they are, right? The Labour government, at the end of the day, the Labour government are essentially Tory 2.0. If we're being real about it, I would much rather just stay, because at least the Tory government are clear on who they are. The Labour Party, one week, are this way, and then the other week, they're that way. And for me, I don't want to be with any of these parties, right? And I think that it's important for us to start engaging outside. The Labour Party does rest on their laurels, right? That's the UK way. Right? We're forever resting on things that we did in the past. They're forever going on about when we won the World Cup in 1894, right? That is the UK's vibe, right? Always resting on when they used to be great, right? They're not great now. They have tied the UK's destiny to a calabash somewhere in the world, right? So I will leave us with this last message. Engage with parties outside of the Labour Party, outside of the Tory government. There are parties that are actually doing really great things, but because we're so obsessed with the two main ones, we forget about them. I've recently started looking into the Green Party, into the Socialist Party, right? They're doing great things, and also they have a clear stance on Palestine, right? For me, that is one of the biggest morality issues of our generation, that any government can be complicit in a genocide. And the Green Party are on the right side of history. I'm not advocating for them, by the way. I've just researched them. But that's what I'm saying. Look into it. We don't, at the end of the day, they need to work for your vote. And you also need to also look into who you want to vote for. Don't be lazy, right? Read their manifesto. Don't look at the propaganda machine. We're seeing that now with Israel, right? They're pushing out all kinds of bullshit, They're pushing out all kinds of propaganda, but if you actually do the research for yourself, you'll realize that you've been lied to, and it's the same thing with these parties. So yeah, research, there are more than two parties.
Thank you very much. Have a lady over here, and then Najambi. But guys, just so I don't miss anybody out, please make sure you shout out points of blackness so I can come to you. And also, as the judge, I have overruled, you can swear if you want to.
Can we keep it succinct, Elizabeth?
Oh, yeah. So, okay, we'll come back to you, but yeah, and also try and keep your replies rather concise, because we are pressed for time. We want to hear from more of you, but yeah, tell more people about it. We'll go to a lady over here.
Yeah.
Then we'll come.
Okay. Trying to remember what I was going to say, but I'll probably miss one. But the first one is, as we've all said, even though the whole representation thing is important, no one who is representing us is really representing us, so that is completely void to me. And I don't know about anyone else, but I actually get a lurch in my stomach anytime I see anyone black or brown supposedly doing politics, because you know you're just going to be judged even harsher, and anything they say is probably going to be embarrassing, so you just feel even worse. So personally, one of the few places that I do not get mad at there being a lack of representation is politics, because I'd rather a white person say it, if I'm honest. The second thing is, the guy earlier, I can't remember his name, Alia? The one who had to leave early, Ali, yeah. My bad. He said that don't think that everybody ethnic has the same, like don't judge everybody to have the same thing. We shouldn't all think that we do. I do have a level of expectation. I do feel like if you are black, brown or a minority and you're on TV and you're advocating politics, I expect a level from you. Not like Suella. I don't want you to be like that. Or Priti Patel. I think that it should be a level and you should be doing it. And then the final thing, and none of this has been about Labour or anything, but the final thing about Labour, as I agree with what Basayo said, with what little we have, we should use it as a strategy. Like, obviously, I appreciate there are other parties, like you said, there are, but right now, the only ones that get the light are Conservative or Labour. So out of those two, we have to use the one that's going to help us even a bit. And I just can't spiritually think that it's going to be Conservatives. But anyway, that's what I've got to say.
I just wonder... Hello? Can you hear me? Is it working? Oh, it's working now. So first of all, I'd love a definition of, what was the word? Afrophobia. I think that was a first today. The second thing that I'd love to just put to the room is, where is our ambition? Like, where is the long-term thinking here? Like, better than the Tories is not good enough today. If we think realistically, even if the Labour Party today is better than the Tories for the next 5 years, great. Let's be realistic about the situation that we're in right now, in terms of the economy, in terms of everything else that's going on in the world right now. There is absolutely no way that we are going to miraculously end up in a much better situation than we are right now over the next 5 years. And what does that mean if the 5 years are led by the Labour Party? What have the past few years taught us? What have the last few elections taught us? I think we need to be thinking long term. I love what you said about other parties. This is the perfect time for us to be ambitious. It's no longer a wasted vote. It's long-term planning. Basayo, I loved what you said about strategy, but for me, strategy isn't voting for the Labour Party. Strategy is realising the situation that we're in right now and accepting the fate that perhaps we are going to be stuck in this shit situation for another 5 years. Perhaps we will. But perhaps, just perhaps, it might be a lower majority that we have, and we're working towards moving ourselves out of this two-party system because... Or maybe the Labour Party will get their shit together over the next 5 years. Maybe that's what's going to happen. But for me, they absolutely do not get my vote, and I implore everyone to spend some time and do some proper research and actually just vote where your heart lies. Like, if you're a Tory, if you're a secret Tory, by all means, just own it. Like, if that is the case, own that. Don't be ashamed at this stage, because we're living in hell, and we've got 5 more years of hell left to live in, and we just hope that we'll come out the other side.
Before we have the next point, Basayo, did you have a rebuttal very quickly?
No, I totally agree with you, by the way. As I said, I'm not a diehard for Labour. I actually don't care. But, respectfully. But I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, however you see it, right, the election is coming soon. To organise in the way you want to organise has to be done simultaneously. So you can vote for Labour for whatever reason you want to. As an example, as I said, don't be preoccupied with what it looks like. If you have a long-term strategy, in the short term, white people can say what they like. You've got my vote. I'm not going to vote because I'm scared what white people are going to write in the paper. That's not how I operate. So I agree with you. I think in the long term, and as Topper said, you organise yourself locally to the point where the 4-year elections have been laid out for you. To do that politicking now is short-sightedness. But what we have to do is make sure we do it alongside that. But another thing I want us to remember is our privilege. There are many people outside of the racial conversation, there are many vulnerable people that might benefit from Labour. Now, if I don't vote Labour because of race politics, what if someone has a disability? What if there are LGBT communities out there that actually rely on, even if it's just one policy that can help them? Am I now going to say because of race, I won't vote for Labour? You have to open your mind and think, is there any other vulnerable communities that might benefit from Labour being there? Even if they're better than Tories, you actually might save a life. And we know this. So for me, again, it's not about die-hard Labour. It's also saying, let's not replicate what other people do and only vote for their own image. Whose life can I save? If it really makes no difference to me, I will vote Labour. And then in the meantime, do my organising, and then hopefully we change the landscape. But this is Britain. You have to be strategic. You can't be preoccupied with what people call you. This is why the left and the right issue gets us confused. You care too much if people call you left or right wing. What is the right thing to do? So I agree with you. We need to be strategic, but think about it. Whose lives can we save outside of this?
Sorry, I'm going to be really, really quick. I stole the mic just to be really quick to counter, because I 100% agree with you about privilege, but I think that's where community comes in, and I think that we need to take a lot more responsibility for the people around us, and long-term thinking is actually thinking about the repercussion. What do you call it? The effect.
Ramifications.
The ripple effect. Okay. So there are people who are scared about voting outside of Labour right now because they think that that is a wasted vote. If a few of us more of us vote and increase the majority or the minority of other parties, that will hopefully incentivize more people to think outside. And we need to be doing more community work. I know that it shouldn't be the responsibility of the community and the civilians, but unfortunately, look at our options. I haven't heard anything positive from the Labour Party that speaks to any other marginalised community. I'm not even talking about me as a black woman, me as a brown woman. I'm highly privileged. I know I'm going to be fine. I'm not the worst off either way things go, but it's not good enough long term.
Thank you very much. I have to go to this lady here, guys, because we're very pressed for time, so we get as many points in as possible.
Probably haven't got much to add to what, kind of off the back of a lot of that, but I just feel like there's a lot of, as communities, we kind of get very demoralised. And, both Labour and Conservative have played into culture wars. Both of them have been using spin a lot of the time and using, language around representation rather than really looking at what are they actually doing in terms of policies for some of the most vulnerable in this country. And what I think we should be more thinking about as black communities is really thinking about how can we punish Labour Party, how can we punish the Conservatives? Because what we're not doing is mobilising enough and saying, well, look, we're not going to vote for you because of X, Y, or Z, and we're not joining forces with other communities and people who are vulnerable in order to create some kind of movement and be able to push back. We're getting very kind of negative and, oh, yeah, it's all racial politics, is this, that, the other. But what can we come up to really push back at what they're doing and actually challenge them? Because they're not right now being challenged by us. They can say what they like. They can put another black person up and say, well, this person is representing X, Y, and Z. But we're not coming back with any challenges. We're not pushing back. Look at the number of now independent candidates who Labour have lost to. They're independent candidates who are coming up over the Palestine issue. People are now thinking they have to mobilise. This isn't just going to come to you. You've got to make it happen. Nobody gives you something on a plate. You've got to turn around and say, well, if you're going to treat us like this, this is how we're going to push back until you give us what we want and put in candidates that we want. And that's what strategy is. It's not about voting for one person or another. It's about mobilising as communities.
Thank you very much. Going to move to this gentleman here.
Thank you, Black. Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm not going to tell you all to vote Conservative.
Before you go ahead, You go ahead? Okay, cool. Go ahead, sir.
I'm not going to tell you all to vote Conservative, but most of you probably know I'm a Tory. What I will say is...
The floor recognises his right to speak, everybody. I don't have to overrule you.
Is that there is so much talent in this room, so much talent of all the people that have stood up and spoken their mind today, either against the Labour Party, for the Labour Party, in the points of blackness. And you talk about strategy, you talk about different communities that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party are catering to. Do you know why they cater to those communities? Because they're organised, because they do shit. Because they gather in their communities, they build movements, they raise money, and they contribute to political parties, and that is why you have the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, singing to certain communities. But the black community has never been good at this. So what I want to say is that please stand for Parliament. Please get involved in political parties. It would be a lovely idea, lady over here in green, for us to think, oh yes, we live in a. Can I just finish my point? I'm not finished. I'm not finished yet, but you can come back to it. Thank you. It's very nice to say, oh, let's look at second and third parties. UKIP got 5 million votes in 2015, not a single MP in the House of Parliament. The second and third parties in this country do not deliver MPs to Parliament. So the way that we make change in this country is through the Labour Party and through the Conservative Party. Now, I've chosen to make that change through the Conservative Party. I'm sure many of you disagree with that. But for those of you that want to make a change in this country who cannot vote Conservative, the only way you can do that is through the Labour Party. So I don't want people to be apathetic about politics in this country. We've got to go out and vote, because the reason why politicians cater to certain communities is because they go out and vote, and one thing that the black British community is not as good as doing as other people is getting out and voting. If you look at the vote levels of black British people, it is not as high as other communities. And I can tell everyone, lots of people are very apathetic in this room. You've got to go out and vote, because that's the only way things are going to change. You've got to join political parties, make movements, make groups, make policies, influence politicians, and that is how we are going to make the long-term change in this country that we all want to see.
Sorry, just another point of blackness. I'm going to have it really, really quickly. For you to stand there and say that black people are disorganised and keep those stereotypes that we don't get organised, that is not true. There were black men and women in this country, who did organise, who fought back against sus laws, who got their heads kicked in by police so that our kids didn't have to have it today, even though they still do it, but that's not the point. The point is that there are so many black groups, people who got together and got organised, who put West Indian Saturday schools together because they were calling our children subnormal. So if you want to talk about what black people have done in this country, we have done a lot of things in this country and we have looked after each other. You said we're not organised and we don't raise money. No, you don't put those stereotypes on. Have some respect for people like my uncle who got his head kicked in by teddy boys and is deaf in one ear, so don't do that.
Thank you very much, everybody. If we're going to raise points, please respect everybody's turn and say point of blackness. We'll get round to everybody, but we are very, very enthused by the passion of the debate. This gentleman was next. Points of blackness, please.
I'd just like to echo the last statement. We have a long, long history of radical movements. I'm from Hackney, and I do remember my dad coming home like 2 days later and me realising that he was at the police station for 2 days because they held him under sus laws. My mum and my grandparents went out and marched in Hackney with Diane Abbott and in New Cross as well during the 80s and the 90s. Hackney is a massive hub of civil rights movements for black people. In Dalston, there used to be a massive civil rights movement in there, and there was also the first bookshop in Hackney as well, which also housed loads of radical discussions from black people, from the LGBT community, black disabled people, black queer people, black trans people. So we have a long-rooted history in radical movements. And the reason why we don't see it a lot now is because it's been clamped down upon a lot, and we are trying to get our bearings. And there are people out there, there's loads and loads and loads of grassroots movements out there that are trying to do the work, and they need to be uplifted. So that's that on that. When it comes to the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, they are both blood clots, in my opinion. They can all go to hell, every single one of them. That whole parliament can go to hell, in my opinion. When it comes to, us and our blackness, I think we need to keep that in mind, but also we need to start thinking radically, and we need to not be afraid of saying the word radical, because the word radical has got us to where we are as black people. I don't know about any other ethnic minorities or people of colour because I'm black, but for us as black people, as African diasporans, the word radical is rooted in our blackness, and we need to keep hold of that. And just like Tope said, and a couple of other people have said, it's about us to dream big, and to dream big for ourselves. And not just for ourselves, for our children as well, because our children are going to grow up in a world where their parents weren't about it. And I don't plan to have children because that's not my ministry, but I do plan to be uncles for a lot of children. And when I do work, and like I've got my own platform as well with Tope, like when we do our work, we're thinking about children, and I'm thinking about, my nieces, my nephews, and I'm uncles to a lot of other children as well. I'm thinking about them. So it's about dreaming big and thinking radical and looking outside of the two-party system, because there is other parties out there that are for us.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of quick things. The first thing is just for us to understand that you're talking about left wing or right wing, it's one bird, yeah? And once you know what the bird is about, you know where you are. This is England, so you've got to understand what that bird is dealing with and where your place in relation to that is, all right? The other thing in terms of understanding about how to be mobilised and to organise in terms of getting your vote to a place where it actually is a value proposition, is recognising that you need things like electoral reform, because under the first past the post system, unfortunately, we're only going to have two parties that can win. So all the talk about going to other parties is great. In reality, it does not deliver MPs, as the guy said. You know, UKIP, a one-party issue, a strong issue for its constituency, can't get any MPs elected. So we have to understand the landscape that we're actually in and how to navigate it and be very strategic and smart about how we go about things. I don't think the Labour Party has done us any favours in recent or contemporary history, and so it's important for us to think about, in the short term, what we need to do to be able to move and mobilise as an organised group, understanding our differences, whilst recognising our shared outcomes. Okay, and I think that will help put us in a better place than rather looking at whether we should, vote for Labour or for Conservatives. We need to start thinking about what we can do for ourselves, and that's what I'll say.
Yeah, hi, sorry. I just felt it quite insulting to say that black people don't organise. I think that's very insulting. But that's what... But I think yeah, it's still the same. Black people do organise this community anyway. And to kind of imply that black people aren't politically engaged, I kind of think is a bit weird. Anyway, and comparing the black community to which is quite fragmented, to other singular communities as well, isn't helpful. You're comparing the black community, which is made up, or in the UK, which is made up of Africans, Caribbeans, and then you have intersectionalities of religions as well. We are not one unit, so we are not going to move in one way. That's one thing as well. And urging people to join political parties. I was a member of the Labour Party for a long time, and I was a member of Young Labour, and I saw the frustrations of people trying to move forward, trying to get become councillors. And we had loads of people defect to the Tories because it's like, well, at least they're going to put me in a place that I'll get elected. So yes, the structure, and someone else mentioned that the Labour Party is changing internally. I don't really believe it. I want to see it first. And also on issues, to me, the Labour Party is trying to appeal to Tory voters, but you're not actually promising them anything. They're trying to, build a red wall, build a red wall. There's no talk of investment in the north. There's no talk of long-term strategy on how to improve the economy in this country. There's no talk of how to reverse the increase in child poverty. There's no talk about how to fix the NHS. It's like, we're just going to invest in it, but how? They're saying they're going to do things, but what is the how? And from the people who were defending Labour, I still don't know what you guys stand for. I don't see the change. I don't see the difference. That's me.
For me...
point of blackness, please.
Point of blackness?
Man.
Thank you. I believe that we want a real Labour, and we won't settle for a Tory light. So what message are we sending as a demographic or a community by rewarding their impotence and uselessness with our vote anyway? If the Tories win, we get them for another 4 years of horror. But if Labour wins under Keir Starmer, what exactly will be different? Oh, at least it's not the Tory party? That's how you end up with a whole party of David Lammies. Right? Because we have seen very clearly where all the other black MPs with a backbone are. They were removed. They've been kicked out. We keep talking, or I keep hearing about strategy. Strategy is to think about the future, not just the next 5 years, not just the next election run. It is to think of what kind of Labour we will have in 10 and 20 years' time. Strategy to me is to send a very clear signal and message to Labour, the party, that they will never win if they try to use a person like Keir Starmer as the head. We can say that we aren't voting for Keir Starmer, we're voting for our local MPs, but we have also seen how they will all bend the knee to the whip. So why lie anyway?
Point of blackness. Political parties inherently have an objective. They have an objective, and unless you punish them, they're not going to change it. And there's a reality of life, and it says an active party member is inherently. I know for Mike, I'm local Hackney member of the Labour Party. I know my community, even though some might not believe this, have been royally screwed up by the party. And it's a choice that we have made not to be organised on a local level. In my CLP, have 300 members who will choose the next MP. Diana, it's not going to be that. That's a reality. Most people won't like it. Whoever's 300 people will choose the next MP. And if you can't find 300 people who align with you, then it's an issue on yourself. Now, that applies to my community as well, is that we've constantly haven't organised, and that goes also on a national scale, is the reality is a majority of MPs in this country from Labour Party gets elected by under 150 people. 150 people, that's it. In an entire constituency with 80,000 people. If you cannot bring those numbers, then there's an issue with organisation. And it's not about Now, many people feel disenfranchised, and I completely understand. But if you play into their game by constantly deciding, I'm unhappy, so I won't join. Labour Party membership costs, I think, around 30 quid a year. Abdi could maybe confirm the number or not. But it's around that area. It's for 5 years or a year before the election, because it's £120, you need 150 people. In the long run, if this is something actually important, that's something you have to do. And like I said, my community is also the one. We've been royally screwed over. But if you're not willing to put the bare minimum in the correct places, it doesn't help if you put hundreds of thousands of hours in X, but you don't do it in Y. With limited amount of time and space and money in the right places, you can make changes, but it's a choice about putting it in the right place.
Point of brightness. Yeah, hi. 60 years ago, a group of people were confined in concentration camps. They were denied water, they were denied food, they were bombed. And the British society was asked to understand that these people were terrorists, and these were people in Kenya, and my family were those people that were being bombed. My mother was 8 until she was 16. She was in a concentration camp. Now, Barbara Castle, those mothers, they wrote letters to British people. They wrote letters to the Queen. They wrote letters to everybody. Barbara Castle read one of those letters, and she took 8 Labour MPs to Kenya. She was astonished to find that actually Britain had created 804 concentration camps in Kenya until 1960. Now, what I'm trying to say is that my natural affinity has always been with Labour, because I feel that they highlighted, their intervention was pivotal to Kenyan becoming free. Obviously, we, the Kenyans, fought for our independence. Now, I have sat and listened to people argue as to why people in Gaza should be denied water and food. I know what my family went through. My mother's childhood, if she were to define it, was pure hunger. Now, I know this is just a single issue, but this is who the current Labour Party is. And I cannot wholeheartedly vote for the Labour Party. Now, I was a member of the Labour Party in the times of Jeremy Corbyn, and I cannot, in all fairness, and I know we have to be strategic. Now, I feel that I don't want to waste my vote because my mother didn't have a voice. My mother wasn't able to vote, but I have the opportunity to vote. Now, I feel that we can show the Labour Party that we, because they're behaving as though there is a done deal. Yeah, we can show them that it's not a done deal, because we can diffuse their power by letting other people in. And I know people are so defeatist, and we're saying, oh no, we are powerless, they're just gonna get in anyway, but we can just try.
Say, long term, be advocating for a proportional representation system. In the short term, I just want to defend the stance we should be voting for smaller parties or independent parties against the two main sort of arguments against that. I think, Basayo, yours was that it's a bit too risky. And there's people's lives we might want to save in the short term, so we need to think about that. No, it's against voting for smaller parties or independent parties. Okay, in that case, I won't tackle that one because maybe I misinterpreted it.
I said voting for them is simultaneous. So if you want to vote for them now, from today, if people want to vote for the small parties, the impact of that versus if they've done that simultaneously, we've got to a stage where we can make that impact.
Okay, great. Then we have no qualms. Albie, on the other hand, we have a couple qualms. Because I think your point was that you're not really making an impact unless you do it within this duopolis party system. And a lot of people have brought up the example of UKIP as not having any MPs and therefore, why would we do anything similar to that and vote for an independent party maybe further left? But bro, like, Brexit happened. Like, UKIP had a very big impact on the political atmosphere and the political scene. UKIP was able to push the Conservative Party so far right-wing that Nigel Farage had the red carpet pulled out for him at the recent Conservative Party conference. And he's literally one of the leading bets to be next leader. We've seen the veer to the right in the Conservative Party largely because they were threatened by people that they saw as their voter base voting for smaller parties and independents that were further right from them. And an opportunity with this election, without fear of the Conservatives taking over en masse because they've royally screwed it up, that we can show Labour in the only way that they really understand, which is at the polling booth, that if you carry on down this line, when it is more of a two-horse race, you're going to be at risk of losing.
Yeah. Would you vote for another party? You've got to think strategically. Like, I'm not trying to help Labour.
Thank you. We'll have to come back. We have another point of blackness over here. So you've been waiting for a long time. The lady, sorry.
Point of blackness. Hi everyone. This is really enlightening and enriching. So thank you for this discussion. I just had like a few points, just things to think about. Essentially, I'm not affiliated with any political party. Maybe my politics is a little bit more left, but that's like a personal thing. Yeah, because you know my employer's watching. But anyways, I think the really important thing is strategy. We've said this throughout the whole night, we've said it, but strategy isn't something you can do alone. It's not an individual thing. So when it comes to like, oh, do your own research, that won't get you as far as when you're doing research together or when you're moving together. When we know there's been like big radical movements, it's all been done because people have collectively come together and they've decided on what they're going to do. And not everyone is going to agree on what that right action is, but what it does mean is that we're moving together. So that's one thing. Another thing is change doesn't happen overnight. It's really important to remember this. So yes, we have an election coming up and things are shit now, but there's gonna be more elections and we need to be thinking long term is another point that I just wanna make as well. Unfortunately, it is a game of politics. As it currently stands, it doesn't look like we're gonna move beyond this two-party system. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't explore the ideas of, you know, looking at other parties or looking at other political systems, but you've got to know when the right time is to make a move on that and when it's not the right time yet, but laying the foundation work to doing that. Does that make sense? I'm just saying this is all part of strategy, you know, we've got to strategize. But then we know that election is coming up. We don't know exactly what the policy is each party is doing because everybody's holding their cards close to their chest. But what we do need to do is, if we don't think that the parties have a good enough like racial equality act or anything coming out, we should definitely look at other measures. So does their policy on healthcare make sense? How is that going to affect the community? Obviously, it feels right now that you're just choosing a game of like the lesser evils. Oh, I'm talking too much. Sorry. Okay, let me just move on to my final points, which is like I think we need some concrete actions from this. I think everybody is emotional, everybody is engaged. I think first we all need to like make a commitment to ourselves to like actually do something about our political education. So that's like joining groups, etc. The other thing is like actually engage in local politics, speak to your local councillors, they're all there. And then also just get outside of your comfort zone. It's really important. But yeah, I hope that was useful.
Thank you very much. Everybody, we're going to hear from one more person. I'm going to go to the closing arguments for the prosecution and defence. I know you've got lots of points of blackness, and we can continue the conversation after this, but we are very, very pressed for time. I hate to be the boring judge, but Nels told me to.
Mm-hmm. Very quick, a couple of points of blackness. First one is that I think a lot of people have been saying it. If we think of ourselves like the Red Wall, like the swing state voters in the US, that's the only way that you actually influence the landscape. Nobody was talking about the Red Wall before they withdrew their vote from the Labour Party. You know, and then once they voted for a different party, suddenly everything is about making policies to win those voters back. So actually, I think if you're not willing to withdraw your vote at this point now, with the current Labour Party that we have, then when? You've got to ask yourselves that question, because if you're not willing to withdraw it now, at what point are they going to actually start listening to you? You've got to take your vote seriously. Actually, that's pretty much it.
It's very well put. Thank you very much. We do have in time for one more comment, madam. Just the one. We'll have one more, man.
I'll make it as quick as possible. Point of blackness. First thing, far be it from me to defend a Labour Party that has a Sir as the leader. So that's the starting point. However, the only thing I would say at this point as well is that when we're talking about conservative and conservative light, that light, as Basayo has said, might make a difference to particular categories of people. Also, just working sort of behind the scenes in civil service and seeing how things work. If you want somebody to bring forward a private member's bill, for example, you might find a better home in a place that has, I don't know, like a Zara Sultana, Don Butler, people like that who actually do represent the voices, who represent our voices and actually do take on our concerns seriously. So the thing I'm politically homeless, I would say right now, to be very honest. But it is a valid question to think about. If I do withdraw my vote, am I then pushing that political spectrum more and more to the right? And we think it can't get worse. We saw with Bush, and then we ended up with Trump. So it can get worse, basically, is the point I'm trying to make. And so I just to think about sort of the political landscape, where are we pushing the dial, and also not just that leader who. Anyway, that's a different point. But also the rest of the MPs in the Labour Party who are actually doing some really, really good work. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Some very good points being made, but we are very much pressed for time here. We are able to continue the conversation if you want to send messages into Uppity social media. Just want to hear the closing statements for the prosecution and the defence. Because Ali got to make his closing statement for the prosecution, I'd like to hear from Basayo. Huh? Is it not? No, not the last one. No, okay. Everyone does, not just him. You all get to make a closing statement. My God. Ali just, left that cat and then dipped. All right, so I'd like to hear first, for closing argument from Basayo Twins, please.
Thank you. As I said, I don't like Labour Party. So I genuinely take what you're saying seriously, the criticism. This criticism I have. But again, as I said, at the end of the day, unless you plan to withdraw from the political system, you have to understand the context for which you exist, but be committed to changing that situation that you're in the next time we vote. Drawing on from what you said, the Labour Party, we know it's trash, but it's still the only Labour Party that can create such an opposition like the Zara Sultanas. Where is that in the Tory Party? You can talk about we don't know what's going to happen, but at least the Labour Party votes in people that goes against the British project. That is the only party we can see out of the two-party system that even has people like, well, even though they let him go, Jeremy Corbyn. That is still the party that Jeremy Corbyn initially wanted to be part of. So you have to see it for the big picture. And again, I'm not downplaying your feelings, but don't get egotistical and stuck there. Be strategic and understand the game you're playing. The gentleman over there said it before, I don't know if he's here. This is the British project. Understand it. It doesn't change. And if you haven't learnt your history, you should really learn and understand what our ancestors were doing when they were here. It wasn't because they were disillusioned or naive. It's because they understand it was better to influence the project than to abandon it.
Hello, for Dr. Cooper.
Okay, so I just want to begin by, of course, distancing ourselves from our other team member who denied the existence of structural racism. If you look around the world and see how resources are distributed, unless there is some bizarre quirk in history which has only redistributed the world's resources in a quite coherent racial hierarchy, there is something going on. And of course, because there is that structural racism, I think we should take into consideration these two arguments that are being made for apparent Labour Party anti-racism. The first, of course, is their increase in race equality training. God, I love race equality trainers, especially the ones who are doing the, what's that thing that they do now? The brain thing. What's the thing with the... They do the unconscious bias training. Oh, racism isn't this thing that's about economic exploitation and governance and control and structure and violence. It's this thing that's deep inside your psyche. And I can surgically remove it through my Labour Party training, and then we're going to go out into the world just free, cleansed of our racism. Thank you very much to the Labour Party for proliferating all those things as you continue with the same old policies as the Conservatives. The Race Relations Acts, of course, were first introduced so that the Labour Party wouldn't keep losing elections like they did, like they lost the by-election in Smethwick with the overtly racist campaigning. And of course, the first person to be imprisoned under the Labour Party's Race Relations Act was who? The Black Power activist, Michael X. Thank you very much for that one, Labour Party. Okay, the Equal Pay Act, of course, introduced by the Labour Party. But why was it introduced? Because of trade union organising. And that is why, of course, we have a current head of the Labour Party who is banning their members of Parliament for visiting pickets. We have members of the Labour Party who are saying, no, I do not support strikes. And in fact, therefore, we have a Labour Party who is against organised labour. What a bizarre situation we're currently being. And all I want to end on is saying, yes, it is small parties like UKIP which have meant that the Conservative parties have adopted pretty much all of their policies and the Labour Party are chasing them close afterwards. And yes, indeed, we probably can learn from the north of England why are the Labour Party chasing a red wall when they should be chasing our black wall.
Johnson, your closing argument, please.
Thank you. Just to start, I think it's important to talk about why I joined the Labour Party. And hopefully it will give some insight as to why I'm speaking today. I joined the Labour Party because when I went to school, 3/4 of the people that left in my year didn't get enough GCSEs to go on to college, which means that the educational system failed 3/4 of my colleagues and 3/4 of my schoolmates. After a Labour government, that figure rose to 70%. So Busia made the point and others have made the point. We've all got into politics for something, or we all care about something, we're all passionate about something. For me, the Labour Party was absolutely at the forefront of addressing that. I was a councillor for 8 years. I would have families in Peckham, I would have families come day after day, surgery after surgery, forced into homelessness because we had a Conservative government which froze housing allowance and housing benefit. So much so that across the capital, only a tiny percentage, 2.3% of housing is covered by the housing benefit because it's been frozen. So I absolutely will fight tooth and nail to be able to ensure we get a Labour government, because that Labour government, the Labour Party, has committed to addressing that. It's committed to investing in education, and it has committed to addressing housing benefit. The only thing I'll say about the prosecution is this, is they seem to be against everything but for nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Ava, as the lead prosecutor, you have the final.
Okay, I really want to make it very clear that when I said that I'm not voting Labour, I don't agree with the Labour, and I said that the Tories have a more diverse front bench and cabinet, it did not mean that I like them or I support them at all. All I'm saying is if you want to be selfish and you're black and brown and you want a political career, it looks like that's the only place that you're going to get it. Me personally, I agree with the lady here who's left, who had said, I do have a standard of behaviour that I expect from black and brown people, just simply self-preservation. It's just common sense. Don't be up there supporting policies that make it harder for people that look like you. To me, Suella Braverman over in Rwanda made no sense. They missed a trick there because I'm telling you, if I'd have been over there, when she got up to leave, I'd have gone, where are you going? Sit down. I agree. I was going to make the point as well. When you're speaking about what the Labour Party have done, they've done that at the behest of trade unions. If you really want to make a difference, join a union. There is power in a union. And I'd also like to point out the fact that the Labour Party are being defunded by quite a few of these unions because of their current behaviour. Busia made some great points, but they were not specific. We're here to talk about the Labour Party. She made the great arguments about political strategy, would be brilliant coming from a think tank, but they had nothing to do with the argument at hand. They were just general. I would also like to say that there's also, in terms of speaking about, this is the problem I have with the current Labour Party. You're talking about, yes, we're not just all black, we have intersectional things in our lives. People are LGBT, and I mention the LGBT community because the Labour Party sat there and partied and danced with them last night, and then today West Streeting made a statement and banning trans women, for attacking trans women. Keir Starmer has been on the radio, laughing along, making Tory talking points when it comes to trans women as well. When it comes to the two-child minimum for benefits, he has said he's not going to roll back on that either. When it comes to disability rights, he's not going to roll back on a single thing that the current Tories have done. I would rather have a Tory simply because, like someone said, I know where I stand. Tory will not take the knee. Keir Starmer will take the knee, and as you turn and walk round, he'll slash your Achilles heel. That is the kind of man he is. So just don't do it at the end of the day. So, and as I mentioned before, there are people who are organising. There's brilliant people. We need to talk about people. Darkest Howe was not in any political party. The Mangrove 9, look at how they defended themselves. As I mentioned, our parents that got up and made the Saturday schools as well. We have people like Mark Thompson from the LGBT community who doesn't just speak about LGBT issues. He's a brilliant leader. So as I'm saying, I agree with a lot of other people. Look at different options. I'm not saying vote Tory. Of course I'm not saying that. I'm just saying don't vote Labour. Just because I actually did share, and I will make this last point, I had to share a dressing room at the BBC this week with Nigel Farage in what I can only say was attempted murder. I don't know why they put me in the room with that man, but he was actually boasting, and I was tweeting it out, he was boasting about lurching this country to the right. And I agree with the point that was made over here. We force them back left. We have to drag them back, and if we have to do that by withholding our vote, and that's what we have to do. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I just wanted to say that, sorry, you guys are all listening again, that we've demonstrated, I think, as a room that we all don't agree. We all have different views, we all want the country to go in different ways, and we are going to vote in different ways, and we've got different strategies to achieve the things that we want to see. I think it comes from a very, very privileged position to say, let the Tories be in for another 5 years. For single parents not being able to make their bills tomorrow, another day of this Conservative government is punishment for them. And for people that say the Labour Party doesn't have any policies, I mean, it's very easy to talk about the negatives, but the positives aren't heard from the mainstream media, and that's why you probably don't hear about it. But the Labour Party has a policy to bring millions of children out of poverty with breakfast clubs. The Labour Party has that policy. GB Energy, creating an energy company that will reduce people's energy bills is another thing the Labour Party's promised. More importantly, the New Deal for working people, you want to talk about, well, let me just talk about this. A New Deal for working people, a bit of policy that the trade unions came up with. And you talk about trade unions, I sit on my trade unions executive. I'm more of a trade unionist than anyone. I'm as much of a trade unionist as anyone. Sorry, that is... Apologies. But a New Deal for working people would increase sick pay for people, ban fire and rehire, outlaw 0-hour contract. That is going to change people's lives fundamentally. And that's the choice you have to vote for. A Labour Party that will radically transform this country, because we have before. And I say people accuse us of resting on our laurels. That's a fair point. But it's because we haven't won for 14 years. And we're trying to win again. And the only thing we can point to is what we've done. And if you're telling me, look at 2009, Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown was able to list 13 years of Labour achievements. You tell me any Tory that can say they can do the same for the last 14 years. They can't. So we can be for something and against, but tonight we've heard what we're against, but what are we for? And I've demonstrated what the Labour Party is. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdi. That brings us to the end of our debate. Please give a round of applause for all of our panellists and arguments. I agree, it's been a very good debate. Guys, we are very pressed for time because you are so passionate, which is very optimistic to see. We're going to go for our standing vote now. So based on the two questions, does everyone have a voting card, first of all? Oh, right, we're going to do a standing vote. We'll do a standing vote because not everyone's got a card. So, based on the arguments you've heard, to vote yes, stand up. To vote no, remain seated.
One second, Dave. Sorry, 1 second. So what we're going to do is this. A lot of you don't have cards, and we've gone fantastically over time. So as opposed to us actually using the cards, which is going to take a bit of time to actually calculate it, forgive us for our lack of environmental sustainability, but we're not going to discard the cards tonight. And we're going to ask you the questions based upon yes or no.
So yeah, based on the fact that not everyone has cards, we're going to do the final questions again. And if your answer is yes, please stand up. And if your answer is no to the question, please remain seated. Everyone make sense? The question? It'll be yes, full stop. But I'll ask both of they're both closed questions. One question is, does Labour work for ethnic minorities? And the other question is it time for ethnic minorities to ditch the Labour Party? So if the answer to that closed question is yes, stand up. If the answer is no, remain seated.
If we're close, we'll then ask people to stand up afterwards.
Yeah. The first question is, and if you want, the answer to this question is yes, stand up. And if your answer to the question is no, is Labour working for ethnic minorities? If you think the answer is yes, stand up. If you think the answer is no, remain seated.
Is Labour's working for ethnic minorities, please stand up. If you believe Labour's working for ethnic minorities, please rise to your feet right now. If you believe Labour's working for ethnic minorities, please rise to your feet right now. That's a vote for yes.
Huh? Okay. So that sounds like a resounding no, I'd say.
Should we ask it?
But we can check for a no. Right. If you think Labour is not working for ethnic minorities, please stand now. Is not working for ethnic minorities. Thank you very much. You can all seat for the next question, please. I think that's a very conspicuous answer. Right, question 2. Is it time for ethnic minorities to ditch the Labour Party? If you think the answer is yes, please stand now. Thank you very much. You guys can sit down. And now, is it time for ethnic minorities to ditch the Labour Party? If you think the answer is no, please stand up now. Yes. Okay, so I think again, that's a resounding yes. Everyone can sit down again.
So, based upon the 2 questions asked, the Labour Party, as prosecuted and defended by their best, and decided on by a jury of their peers, as presided over by the Honourable Judge, Dame Baptiste.
My gown got hot.
This room hereby finds, I should probably get into the camera and say this, as officially decided upon by this room, which is non-politically aligned or so and anything else, this room finds that yes, that, I beg your pardon, no, the Labour Party is not working for ethnic minorities. Resounding. And in response to the question, is it time for ethnic minorities to ditch the Labour Party, this room also voted yes. This room voted, so it's pretty much, I've got to say, it's not, in the words of my West London brother Castillo, it's not looking good, bruv. It's a bit of a nerve-wracking one. So yeah, so on both counts, probably on the latter one, whether it's time the Labour Party should be ditched, it was a lot closer. But on the former one, it was resounding. It really. So that's no, yeah. So I'm not picking on you guys, but I just mean it. But it's something that I think that as a group of people, we should all bear in mind. Dane, any words any thoughts from you?
Kind of went the way I thought it would go, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think there were some amazing arguments being made. I think it's very inspiriting to see so many people that are politically astute as well as engaged. And I think speaking as the judge and trying to be as impartial as possible, I think it's very important for people in this room to make other people aware of the conversations that were being had and for us to take advantage of our political power and to galvanise and to continue these conversations and most importantly hold all parties that exist along the bipartisan spectrum to account to represent us. So yeah, So let them take a vote for granted, and until we can buck or address this system of first past the post and a two-party system, then we continue to have our conversations, continue to express ourselves, and yeah, hopefully arrive at a point where what is a unanimous state is where these parties do what they are supposed to do, and that is represent the will of the people that salarize them and keep them afloat.
I must say, I'll just say one final thing. I'll say one final thing. For having arranged Uppity or so and found this organisation, one of the things that really did surprise me overarchingly was two things. Number one, after 14 years of Tory rule, it was unbelievably difficult to find people who would be happy to come and represent the Labour Party in a room full of black people, who are black and brown people, and so I just want to say thank you to the three of you. You've really done it. So we're really, really grateful to you.
I would suggest that you report back with your findings. You have now heard the will of the people. It's important to disseminate that amongst your parties, respectively.
Absolutely. And I think, overarchingly, number two or so too, it's just that there was another thing I'll just say is that sometimes when you speak to people about it too, there was a palatable sense of fear, even from black Labour MPs that I spoke to about this or so, who I was quite... I'm not saying any names. That would be wrong to do so. And I don't know, I'm going to declare I didn't speak to Kate Osama, but it's something I think that we should just be aware of, that we are this room is what Labour Party looks like or so, and it shouldn't be like that. But anyway, we're not here to bash anybody. The people have spoken and the people have spoken. Ladies and gentlemen, Dame Baptiste, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Please do find me on social media. I'll be saying wild political shit too. I'm sure Nels will reiterate this as well. All of your input has been massively welcomed. Please do continue the conversation online. Find the Uppity account on social media and use the hashtag Uppity if you haven't been able to make your point of blackness. Thank you very much and get home safe.
Thank you. Buy some books. Buy some books. The authors are here to get them signed if you want to. You've got some books over there by Adam Elliott Cooper, Dr. Adam Elliott Cooper, the victorious Dr. Adam Elliott Cooper, and of course myself and Jambi, who played Karen. Thank you.
Any words for the camera?
Very informative. I've learned a lot, and it's swayed my mind on whether I should vote for Labour if they're still serving us.
My mind was jumping. I was this side and that side and then that side. It was very interesting.
Excellent.
Yeah, as usual, great to come here to Uppity discussions because it's always a lively debate, tackling really serious issues, but with a jovial and light-hearted manner as well. But I think this time round, it's such a serious topic because it's our livelihoods at stake, and it's about what do we do with our conscience, because we have always voted for Labour. And I'm struggling at the moment. I don't know whether I can vote for them because I believe I have to vote with my conscience. And a party that is willing to side with the government on not calling for a ceasefire when people are being killed in their thousands. In my conscience, I can't vote for them because they're on the wrong side of history. But really interesting that each time somebody made one point, you thought, yeah, well, maybe I do need to vote for them because we don't want to lose the vote, but then somebody else said something else. So ultimately, I think people need to make their own decision, but we need to organise collectively if we are to boycott Labour in order to make our voices heard. They're not represented.
I've never been to a night like this before, and it gave me a lot to think about. I think there's a lot of rage in all of us, and it's nice to hear some points that make us think about the rage in a more investigative manner, which is how I felt. Had a good time.
I was just telling them that I haven't been in a space where people have been able to have any sort of conversation around politics at all in a way that didn't just resort to like screaming matches in a very long time. So I think that was the most refreshing thing about it.